Chapter 180. The fat youth's punch was too ferocious. When it came crashing down, it actually formed a gale that blew Ling Yishua's clothes with a flapping sound. The wind blew the surrounding sand and stones. If Ling Yishua was really hit by this punch, she would be severely crippled even if she didn't die. However, there was no such restriction in the small sparring between the Heavenly Ninja Academy and the Latent Dragon Camp. It could kill or even cripple the opponent. Soul-stealing palm. Ling Yishua just stood there and threw out a seemingly light palm. The palm wind wasn't that strong, and the scene wasn't that majestic. However, the expression of the young man who was watching the battle from the side changed drastically. He knew very well that the fat youth's most powerful technique was the giantification technique. Combined with various martial skills, it was much more powerful. However, the strength of his body made the fat youth's soul much weaker. The fat youth was most afraid of soul attacks. However, Ling Yishua used the top martial skill, soul-stealing palm. If it was just an ordinary top martial skill, they wouldn't be afraid. However, it was a top martial skill that specialized in soul attacks. If Ling Yishua's soul power was strong enough, the fat youth would lose without a doubt. This wasn't a difference in strength. It was completely restrained. As expected, when Ling Yishua's palm came, the fat youth who was originally attacking her became absent-minded for a moment. That fierce punch directly hit his feet. Boom! A huge crack appeared on the ground and continued to crack downwards. The place where the fat youth was standing sank. So much so that his huge body also tilted. How could Ling Yishua miss such a good opportunity? She flew up and slapped the fat youth's body. However, this palm didn't hit any vital points, but a position that no one would expect. This position was the weakness of the giantification technique. This woman is too scary. How could she see the weakness of the giantification technique? Did our information leak? The lazy youth's expression was ugly. Compared to the fat youth's defeat, he was more worried about the leakage of information. Of course, he didn't know that the weakness wasn't seen by Ling Yishua, but by Ling Xiao. He just told Ling Yishua with the Sky Dragon's true essence. With one palm, the fat youth returned to his original size and then fainted. He was a late 7th level martial vein realm martial master. Ling Yishua was also a mid-stage 7th level martial vein realm martial master. There wasn't much difference between them, and Ling Yishua had restrained the fat youth from the beginning to the end, so she won very easily. I've said it before. We can't say anything until we've fought. After Ling Yishua defeated the fat youth, she returned to Ling Xiao's side. Congratulations, senior sister. Actually, you can win even if I don't help you, Ling Xiao said in a low voice. I can win, but it definitely won't be that easy. His gigantification technique is too difficult to deal with. If I can't find his weakness in a short period of time, I will definitely be at a disadvantage. The scariest thing about Ling Yishua was that she was calm enough. No matter if she won or lost, she could always clearly see her own weaknesses and strengths. Therefore, after almost every battle, she would improve quite a bit. Heavenly Ninja Academy's geniuses are only SO. General Yu could finally vent all his pent-up anger. The fat youth's face turned red, but he did not dare to be impudent here because General Yu's cultivation was much higher than his. There's still one more battle. The outcome is still uncertain. The lazy young man's face was filled with killing intent as he looked coldly at Ling Xiao. Yeah, you'll lose if there's one more battle. Ling Xiao walked out from the crowd and looked at General Yu with a smile. General, if we win this battle, will we get any rewards? Of course. The two people who win will each get a quasi-transcendent martial art. General Yu nodded. Moreover, the martial art will be provided by Heavenly Ninja Academy. You can choose freely. Actually, the Dean of Heavenly Ninja Academy, Wan Ben, was the one who proposed the battle. His goal was to obtain all of the quasi-transcendent martial arts in the latent dragon camp. Lin Zhe agreed to this request under pressure. Fortunately, quasi-transcendent martial arts were not transcendent martial arts. Although there were not many of them in the latent dragon camp, there were still many of them. Originally, Lin Zhe thought that the latent dragon camp would benefit from this kind of competition since there were winners and losers on both sides. However, since the beginning of the battle, the latent dragon camp had not won even once. Therefore, the latent dragon camp had been giving the martial art manuals to the Heavenly Ninja Academy's disciples for free. Oh, this is not bad. Ling Xiao smiled. He didn't really like battles that didn't have any rewards. It's not bad, but you can't win. The lazy youth waved his hand and took out a weapon that looked like a saber and a sword from his storage ring. It was a long and flat blade. Like a saber, it only had a blade on one side. However, its width was closer to that of a sword. It looked very strange. Even though this is just a spar, I hope you can understand that I will definitely not show mercy. You better not disappoint me too much and play with me more. Ling Xiao did not take out his ice-glazed sword. He only wanted to test his heavenly dragon golden body that had just broken through to the second level. Therefore, he was going to fight with his opponent with his bare hands. I won't use more than 10 moves against you, Ling Xiao said calmly. The lazy youth's expression changed, and he said gloomily, Good, very good. I'd like to see how you're going to defeat me within 10 moves. Be careful not to cut your own tongue. In a flash. As soon as he finished speaking, the lazy youth suddenly pointed the strange saber in his hand at Ling Xiao. He instantly turned into a shadow and shot out. His target was Ling Xiao's vital part. Qi. A light blue sword light pierced through the air and blue electric sparks were produced. The air was almost melted by the friction. Facing the attack, Ling Xiao's expression was calm. As his body glowed with a golden light, a giant black bear appeared behind him. Obviously, it came from young Master Morong's martial art remnant soul, the black bear remnant soul. He chose this remnant soul because the black bear remnant soul represented strength and wildness. Ling Xiao was fighting with his bare hands. He wanted to completely suppress his opponent with strength. Then he threw out 3 punches in a row. The meteor fist that glowed with a golden light met the light blue sword light. Crack! Crack! Like a broken piece of iron exploding, the light blue sword light was shattered by the terrifying golden light before it could even get close to Ling Xiao's fist. It exploded and scattered in all directions. In the crowd, someone was accidentally shot, and his body was directly shot through. It was just the afterglow of the explosion, but it was already so powerful. It could be seen how terrifying that sword light was. Even so, it was still broken by Ling Xiao, and it was broken very easily. Second flash. The lazy young man didn't show any signs of surprise. This was because he did not expect to defeat Ling Xiao in one move. If that was the case, this battle would be too boring. Moreover, his opponent was not that weak. Just as Ling Xiao shattered his first sword light, an illusory figure appeared behind him. It was a shadow holding a strange saber. This shadow was not very tall, only about 2 meters tall. However, the strong power contained in this shadow was definitely not to be underestimated. Swordsman Ninja Spirit. This should be one of the ninja's longest sword ninja spirits. However, to be able to perfect this ninja spirit to 70%, this child is indeed very talented. Even General Jiuyu, who was watching the show, had to admit that this lazy youth should be the strongest of the 3 people sent by the Heavenly Ninja Academy this time. Although his cultivation was the same as the fat youth, the late 7th level of the martial vein, he did not have any obvious weaknesses. Moreover, his mind was calmer and smarter. When the ninja spirit appeared, the youth took a mysterious step. His body that was originally rushing towards Ling Xiao suddenly appeared on Ling Xiao's left side. Chapter 181. The youth suddenly moved to Ling Xiao's side with a strange footwork. and then the strange blade in his hand slashed down again. Within a short distance, the strange blade instantly tore through the air, making a shrill whining sound as it tore through the air. Due to the friction in the air, the temperature suddenly rose, and even produced an obvious flame. It wasn't hard to guess that even with the protection of true essence, blood would splatter on the spot after being hit by this blade. Clang! What surprised everyone was that in the face of such a sudden change in moves, Ling Xiao's body didn't move at all. He didn't even look and only punched out with his left hand, accurately hitting the strange blade. This punch was still golden, as if it was wrapped in gold. This was the effect of the 9 transformation golden body technique combined with the heavenly dragon golden body. The violent shock caused the strange blade in the lazy youth's hand to almost fly out. This time, he couldn't help but be surprised. The strange blade in his hand was a mortal-grade artifact. Coupled with his vigorous true essence and top-grade martial arts, it actually couldn't withstand the power of the opponent's high-grade martial arts? What kind of international joke was this? Scram! Swinging away the strange blade with his left hand, Ling Xiao's golden light became even more dazzling. His entire person faintly felt like a dragon soaring in the wild. He twisted his body, and his right hand continuously punched out several times. Each punch was full of power, causing the air to explode. Pung, 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 ninja secret technique, body protection technique. Seeing that he couldn't dodge, the shadow behind the youth suddenly appeared in front of him. Then true essence poured into the shadow, forming a layer of barrier, blocking the youth tightly. However, the genius youth of the Heavenly Ninja Academy clearly underestimated the power of Ling Xiao's punches. After blocking a few times, the shadow instantly exploded, and he was also forced to retreat. He hurriedly dodged, but at least he wasn't sent flying. Seeing this, General Jiu, you couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression, and then that expression immediately turned into a brilliant smile. To be honest, he was a little worried about Ling Xiao at first, afraid that Ling Xiao would suffer in the hands of this lazy youth. After all, the other party was at the late stage of the 7th level martial vein, while Ling Xiao was only at the early stage of the 7th level martial vein. But seeing this, he felt that his worries were completely unnecessary. From the looks of it, Ling Xiao did not even use 50% of his strength. To be able to defeat his opponent so easily, this brat was too terrifying. Now he finally understood that the most terrifying thing about Ling Xiao was not his strength, but his intelligent way of fighting. In Ling Xiao's battles, he was always able to calculate everything. The opponent's weakness, the flaws in the opponent's moves, the best time to attack, the best attack moves, the best combination of moves, and so on. This allowed Ling Xiao to use only 50% of his strength to do something that could only be done with 80% or even 90% of his strength. General Jiu, you had never seen anyone in the world who could do this. None of the 12 Tiger Guards could do it. Even Lin Shuai couldn't do it. That Wan Ben couldn't do it either. No one in Heavenly Ninja Academy could do it either. Perhaps this was the most terrifying thing about Ling Xiao. Of course, the young genius from Heavenly Ninja Academy wouldn't be so weak. He probably didn't use all of his strength either. The following battle might be even more exciting. General Jiu Yu smiled. He was suddenly filled with confidence in Ling Xiao. Hee, senior brother, if you don't use all of your strength, I'm afraid you'll lose. The lively young girl giggled as she shouted at the lazy young man. The lazy young man was clearly provoked. With a bang, he stomped on the ground and stabilized his body that was rapidly retreating. A few more cracks appeared on the ground. The poor ground of the Lathan Dragon Camp was almost always full of holes after every battle. Perhaps it was because of this that the ground was preserved. Otherwise, if it was any other ground, it would be a heartache for half a day if it was broken. Ling Xiao, you're really powerful. You're qualified to make me use all of my strength. After saying that, black flames rose around the young genius's body. The flames burned more and more fiercely, and the wind that blew past him suddenly became scalding hot wind. The shadow behind him became more solid. However, the ninja's expression became somewhat ferocious. His body was also burning with black flames. Then he held the strange blade with both of his hands. The black flames passed through his arms and then merged into the strange saber of the youth, causing the saber to burn. The strange black flames gave people a creepy feeling, causing many of the spectating youths to lose control of their aura chi and true essence. Black Sun Prison Break. The youth roared and then slashed at Ling Xiao with the ninja. The two strange blades merged into one and turned into a huge blade that was completely condensed from true essence and black flames. It was more than 10 meters long. It directly slashed at Ling Xiao. The huge blade was too fast, and its power was too fierce. It almost directly tore the space in front of it and completely burned the air. The crackling sound was like a forest on fire. Hee, senior brother is finally serious. This blade is very powerful and fast. His opponent definitely won't be able to block or dodge it. He's definitely going to lose. The vivacious girl giggled at the chubby youth. Her originally nervous expression also relaxed. The chubby youth only nodded. He understood the power of the lazy youth's blade the best. Even in the Sky Ninja Academy, not many people could block it. At this moment, General Yu Yu's originally relaxed face had a bit of worry. The power of the youth's attack was completely out of his expectations. This should be a power that only a quasi-transcendental martial art could achieve. Ling Xiao had never cultivated a quasi-transcendental martial art before. Facing this attack, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Adding on the fact that his cultivation was not as good as his opponent's, the situation was not optimistic. General Yu Yu, there's no need to worry. Junior brother will definitely win. Although this Sky Ninja Academy genius is very powerful, in front of junior brother, he's not worth mentioning. Ling Yishue's voice sounded in General Yu Yu's ears. You're very confident. General Yu could not help but smile bitterly. He really did not know where Ling Yishue's confidence in Ling Xiao came from. It was probably because of her bias. After all, Ling Yishue and Ling Xiao were both martial artists from Tianfeng City. Moreover, they seemed to have a close relationship. Of course, he also hoped that Ling Xiao could win. In that case, the Laden Dragon Camp would be able to vent their anger. Die. The Sky Ninja Academy genius poured almost all of his true essence into this terrifying blade. Therefore, his face was slightly pale. However, he did not regret it because he knew the power of his blade. Just as the huge blade was about to slash down, Ling Xiao actually revealed a faint smile. This kind of move is more interesting. It was not that he was arrogant, but he really needed such a powerful move to test the defense of his golden body. Roar! A dragon's roar sounded. The golden light around Ling Xiao's body became even more dazzling. Even the black bear's remnant soul behind him was completely covered by the golden light. Chapter 182. General Yu, you had only guessed that Ling Xiao was practicing the heavenly dragon golden body in the precious treasure pavilion. However, it was extremely difficult to learn a transcendent martial art. Therefore, he did not expect Ling Xiao to reach a high level in such a short period of time. However, it seemed that Ling Xiao's heavenly dragon golden body was already at the small success stage. Was there a mistake? No one could answer him. On the other side, the giant bear paw had also merged with Ling Xiao's palms. Then his palms seemed to have solidified as he faced the giant blade. Crack! Crack! The giant bear paw and the giant blade collided in the air. Then the blade was clamped tightly between Ling Xiao's palms. Grabbing the blade with his bare hands. How the F*CK is this possible? Boom! While everyone was discussing, the giant bear paw suddenly pulled back and the giant blade shattered. The genius from the Heavenly Ninja Academy was sent flying and spat out blood. He fell to the ground and could not get up. Actually, I don't need to face this move head-on at all. That's because this move of yours is flashy, but useless. It's nice to look at, but useless. Ling Xiao looked at the genius on the ground and said calmly, I fought you head-on because I wanted to tell you that 3 or 4 moves are enough to defeat you. I didn't even need 10 moves. I overestimated you. The genius had already stood up. However, when he heard Ling Xiao's words, he could not help but be furious. He spat out another mouthful of blood, and his face became even more ghastly. The latent dragon camp won this battle. Ha ha ha, Ling Xiao. You've really brought honor to the latent dragon camp. No, you've brought honor to the border general's estate. You've brought honor to the human race. General Yu Yu was stunned for a moment before he immediately announced the result. Long live! Long live Commander Ling! Ling Xiao! Ling Xiao! In the next moment, the latent dragon camp was filled with deafening roars. Regardless of whether they liked Ling Xiao or disliked Ling Xiao, they all shouted excitedly at this moment, because they had long had enough of this attitude. At the same time, they understood that it wasn't that Heavenly Ninja Academy was too good, but that they hadn't worked hard enough. Look at Ling Xiao. He was just a newbie who had just joined the latent dragon camp, but he was able to achieve what he had today with his own ability. What reason was there not to work hard? What reason was there to complain? Where are the items? General of the Ninth Moons looked at the 3 geniuses from the Heavenly Enduring Academy and asked with a smile, if you agree to a bet, you have to accept your loss. Here are 2 quasi-transcendent martial art copies. Take them. The lazy young man took out 2 secret manuals from his storage ring and handed them to General September. But don't blame us for not reminding you. You'd better memorize the contents, because these 2 manuals will automatically self-destruct after 15 minutes. Having said that, he looked back at Ling Xiao and coldly said, I admit that you're very strong, but defeating me is nothing. The next time you go to the Heavenly Ninja Academy, you'll meet even stronger opponents. Compared to the true geniuses of the Heavenly Ninja Academy, you're still lacking. Then he turned around and left in a sorry state with the help of the young girl and the chubby young man. Ling Xiao, you have a good memory. Memorize the contents of these 2 manuals first. Then pass one of them to Ling Yixue. General September hurriedly handed the 2 quasi-transcendent martial art copies to Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao nodded and casually flipped through them. At that moment, there was already a copy in the Mountain River world. 2 inner force cultivation methods. Ling Xiao could not help but frown. General September, there's a problem with these 2 manuals. A lot of the key parts have been changed. That's normal. General September sighed and said, although the rules say that we can't make any major changes to the secret manual, it's allowed to slightly change a few key points. We've done that in the past, so whether you can cultivate it or not will depend on your own abilities. Okay, I understand. Ling Xiao nodded. In fact, this kind of thing might be very unpleasant for others, but it was nothing to him, because he had the Mountain River martial spirit. For this kind of quasi-transcendent martial art, only a few key parts had been modified. It was completely possible to analyze and crack it. Understand? Aren't you going to hand it over to me, and then let a martial vein level 9 martial master help me crack it? General September asked doubtfully. How long will it take? Ling Xiao asked. At least a month. General September thought for a moment and said, that won't be necessary. Ling Xiao thought to himself, my Mountain River martial spirit will probably be completely cracked in a moment. It would be faster if I did it myself. No need? Are you sure? I'm sure, and I'm sure. After Ling Xiao finished speaking, he turned around and returned to his courtyard. Ling Yixue and Cold Plum also followed. The 2 of you can do whatever you want. I'm going to comprehend this quasi-transcendent martial art. After saying that, Ling Xiao entered the training room. The 2 quasi-transcendent martial arts he obtained from the Heavenly Ninja Academy with a soul ignition technique and the snow lotus true explanation. Both of them belong to the category of inner force cultivation technique, but there was a big difference. Among them, the snow lotus true explanation was actually the advanced version of the snow lotus chi technique. Thinking about it, the snow lotus sword technique was a transcendent sword technique, while the snow lotus chi technique was only a peak grade martial art. It was impossible to match. Most likely, the snow lotus true explanation had an advanced version, which should be a transcendent martial art. However, to be able to obtain a quasi-transcendent inner force cultivation technique, Ling Xiao was already satisfied. Since it was a quasi-transcendent martial art compared to a peak-grade martial art, it naturally had its advantages. The outstanding part of the snow lotus true explanation was that it could completely transform the foundation of the snow lotus chi technique. In other words, if Ling Xiao cultivated it, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Not only that, the true essence condensed from this set of inner force cultivation technique not only had an extremely strong yin attribute, but it could also change the opponent's true essence attribute. It didn't sound very useful, right? Actually, it wasn't. If the opponent was proficient in fire true essence or earth true essence, then their martial art would definitely be compatible with these attributes. One could imagine if the opponent used the raging flame palm, but their true essence was of the yin attribute, would the raging flame palm still be powerful? Of course, this kind of change was only gradual. It was impossible to completely change the opponent's true essence all at once, so the advantage was that it could weaken the opponent's attack. If combined with the mountain river martial spirit's ability to devour true essence, the opponent would definitely suffer a great loss. The soul ignition art was very interesting. Rather than calling it an inner force cultivation technique, it was better to call it a martial art that used soul strength as true essence. Of course, other than the transformation effect, it could also increase soul strength. This was a martial art that was simply tailor-made for Ling Yixue. Ling Yixue's true essence level was inferior to many people, and even inferior to martial artists in the same realm. The reason was that she was from the soul race. However, with the soul ignition art, she didn't need to condense true essence at all in the future. She could completely change to using soul strength as the source of energy for martial arts. Ling Yixue's soul strength was so strong that even a martial artist at the peak of the 9th level martial vein could not compare to her. If she really cultivated the soul ignition art, her strength would increase by more than one level. Chapter 183. Although Ling Xiao wasn't from the Soul Clan, he was born with a powerful soul. Coupled with his mountain river martial spirit, his soul power wasn't as monstrous as Ling Yixue's, but it was much stronger than most people. There must be a reason why the Heavenly Ninja Academy chose these two quasi-transcendental martial arts. The Snow Lotus Truth required one to cultivate the Snow Lotus Chi technique to the perfection stage in order to cultivate it. This was equivalent to saying that it was meaningless to most martial artists. The soul ignition art was only useful for martial artists with powerful souls. It was meaningless for most martial artists. They chose these two quasi-transcendental martial arts so that they could embarrass the latent dragon camp when they lost. They didn't expect that it would help Ling Xiao and Ling Yixue instead. Ling Xiao secretly smiled and gave the two quasi-transcendental martial arts to his mountain river martial spirit to decipher. Just as he expected, it only took a moment to decipher them. Then he took a copy of the soul ignition art from the mountain river world and gave it to Ling Yixue to study. He used the quasi-transcendental secret technique, the shadow cultivation secret technique, to create two clones. His main body cultivated the Snow Lotus Truth. One clone cultivated the Soul Ignition art, and the other continued to consolidate the Sky Dragon golden body. He had benefited a lot from the battle just now. There was a reason why he only had 2 doppelgangers to cultivate. Although the clones could help speed up cultivation, The consumption of physical strength and soul power would also increase proportionally. For example, if a clone could increase cultivation speed by 70%, then the consumption of physical strength and soul power would increase by 70%. He couldn't create too many clones. Because of the foundation of the Snow Lotus Chi formula, Ling Xiao was able to cultivate the Snow Lotus Truth to the initial stage within an hour. The Snow Lotus Truth had a total of 9 levels. He had already cultivated it to the 3rd level. He could clearly feel that the quality of his true yuan had improved. It had become purer and more powerful. A quasi-transcendental martial art could reach the small success stage so easily. No matter who saw it, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out. The true yuan obtained from cultivating the Snow Lotus Truth was called the Snow Lotus True Yuan. Although this kind of true essence was still a lot weaker than the Sky Dragon true essence, it was a lot stronger than ordinary true essence. Even though the energy in one's body would transform into quintessential essence after advancing to martial master, there would still be differences in quality. The difference between high-grade martial arts, top-grade martial arts, and quasi-transcendent martial arts was especially huge. This was also the reason why after a martial artist became a martial master, they couldn't wait to cultivate a quasi-transcendent inner force cultivation method as soon as possible. It could be said that apart from a small part of the Sky Dragon true essence, all of the true essence in his body had been converted into Snow Lotus true essence. Ling Xiao's strength had at least doubled. If he met the genius of the Heavenly Ninja Academy again, he would be able to win even without using the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body. After all, the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body was a transcendent martial art. It was best not to use it casually to avoid getting into trouble. In the previous battle, he believed that other than the 9th Moon General, no one knew that he had used the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body. They probably all thought that he had used the 9 Transformation Golden Body technique. After all, the two techniques were a little too similar on the surface. Next, he cultivated for nearly 2 hours and consolidated the Snow Lotus Truth to the 3rd level. The use of the Snow Lotus True Essence in his body also became more adept. On the other hand, the Soul Ignition art could be considered to have entered the entry level. After cultivating it to the 1st level, his soul power had increased by a lot. Moreover, he discovered that if he used his soul power to execute the terrifying finger, its power would become even more terrifying. Now he could almost conclude that the blue-clothed woman he met in the Dragon Submission Mountain Range was related to the Soul Tribe. In addition, he also made a very interesting discovery. Using the Soul Ignition art, he could completely use his soul power to execute the martial arts he cultivated. The power was almost the same as using True Essence, but the effect was as different as heaven and earth. Using True Essence to execute a martial skill still emphasized on the destruction of the body. On the other hand, martial arts executed with soul power focused on destroying the soul. This meant that he had 2 different ways of executing the same martial arts. If he could use it flexibly in battle, it would be impossible for his opponent to guard against it. In addition, Ling Xiao discovered that in the process of cultivating the extraordinary martial arts, Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, and quasi-transcendental martial arts, he actually had a slight understanding of the first form of the Snow Lotus sword technique that he had comprehended from the remnant extraordinary martial arts. This was probably related to the Snow Lotus Truth and the extraordinary profound of the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body. After the mountain river martial spirit absorbed the extraordinary profound of the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, it gradually simulated the extraordinary profound of the Snow Lotus sword technique. However, this was not a simple matter. After such a long time of comprehension, he had only comprehended the first form of the Snow Lotus sword technique, flying snow, to about 60 to 70% mastery. He should be able to try using it in an attack. Its power would not be inferior to a quasi-transcendental martial art, but it would not reach the level of a transcendent martial art. However, At this rate, he estimated that he would soon completely comprehend the first form. At that time, Ling Xiao would have one more trump card. Sensing that he was unable to make any further progress, Ling Xiao stopped his closed-door cultivation. Instead, he sorted out his current situation. Currently, he had two complete martial spirits, the Cherry Tree martial spirit and the Dark Cloud martial spirit. However, he did not dare to use the complete martial spirits. After all, it would attract too much jealousy. Unless he was on the verge of death, he would not use it easily. He had 4 martial Tao remnant souls, the Ghost Ship remnant soul, the Giant Sword remnant soul, the Blood Blade remnant soul, and the Black Bear remnant soul. Currently, these 4 martial Tao remnant souls had their own special uses. When the Ghost Ship remnant soul was used with the Soaring Cloud Steps, its speed would not be inferior to a quasi-transcendental martial art. Moreover, it could save a lot of true yuan and also had a certain degree of attack power. When the Giant Sword remnant soul was used with the sword move, it could greatly increase the power of the sword move. When the Blood Blade remnant soul was used with the sword move, it could make the sword move more strange and unexpected. When the Black Bear remnant soul was used in barehanded combat, it could increase the power of the move and increase the strength of the body. It could be said that he did not want to give up any of these 4 remnant souls because they were all useful. When he encountered different enemies, he could use the remnant souls. As for the martial arts he was currently cultivating, they were mainly Transcendent Martial Art, Heavenly Dragon, Golden Body Transcendent, Incomplete, Snow Lotus Sword, Arts Quasi-Transcendent Martial Arts, Soul Ignition Art, Snow Lotus Truth, Shadow Cultivation Secret, Technique, Top Grade Martial Arts, Multiple Shadow Sword Art, Power Not Inferior to a Quasi-Transcendental Martial Art, 9 Transformation, Golden Body Technique, Last Transformation, Imperial Sword Art Attack Power, comparable to a Quasi-Transcendental Martial Art, Unique Martial Arts, Soaring Cloud Steps, and Ox Demon Art. They surpassed all high-grade martial arts and were currently slightly inferior to Quasi-Transcendental Martial Arts. Special Martial Arts, Terrifying Finger, and Geocentric Ice Lotus currently. High-grade martial arts could not keep up with the pace. Although Ling Xiao used Meteor Fist to defeat the genius of Heavenly Ninja Academy. However, he was very clear that he actually relied on Heavenly Dragon Golden Body. Right now, he desperately wanted to obtain a set of fist or palm techniques so that he could fight barehanded. After all, after obtaining Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, barehanded combat would be able to display its greatest strength. Chapter 184. After assessing his strength, Ling Xiao felt that he had already surpassed his peers by quite a bit. However, when he thought of General Yuling and Dai Yuling, he was very clear that he could not slack off. Of course, when one's cultivation reached a bottleneck, it was not a bad idea to go out and relax. He had just walked out of the cultivation room when Cold Plum walked over. Young master, Miss Yishui is still in closed-door cultivation. Besides that, there's a rumor circulating in the latent dragon camp that you might want to know about. Oh, what's the rumor? Ling Xiao asked. Cold Plum replied, it's rumored that the #1 expert in Baiyun province, Master Baiyun, will be accepting disciples once every 3 years. This time he will be accepting disciples from the entire Baiyun province. The location is Sky Cloud City, but those who will be chosen are either from Heavenly Ninja Academy or Latent Dragon Camp. This Master Baiyun is more powerful than Wan Ben and Lin Shui? Ling Xiao asked in surprise. It's rumored that he might be a transcendent. Cold Plum replied. Transcendent? Since he's a transcendent, I'll have to give it a try. If one could become a transcendence disciple, it would definitely be beneficial to one's cultivation. Young master, please don't let your guard down. This Master Baiyun only accepts young people below 16 years old. Moreover, he only looks at their innate potential and not their cultivation or strength. The 12 Tiger Guards are very powerful, right? But none of them were chosen by him. Cold Plum explained. Has anyone been chosen before? Ling Xiao asked curiously. Yes, 2 people from Heavenly Ninja Academy were chosen. In the past, there was a genius from the Governor Manor who was also chosen. Master Baiyun has had this rule for over 100 years, but he only has 5 disciples. Cold Plum nodded. From Cold Plum's words, one could tell that this Master Baiyun's selection of disciples was very strict. No matter what, I have to try. If you don't try, the possibility is 0. If you try, at least the possibility won't be 0. Thank you for telling me this news. Ling Xiao smiled and said, Let's not talk about this anymore. Come, let's exchange some pointers. There are some things I want to explore in battle. For the next 3 days, Ling Xiao basically spent his time cultivating and exchanging pointers. His cultivation base, strength, and combat ability had to be improved. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, General Juyu gathered all the latent dragon camp disciples again and announced a piece of news. 1 day later, Master Baiyun will return to Sky Cloud City and will be recruiting disciples at White Cloud Monastery. All disciples under the age of 16 can go and try. It doesn't matter if your cultivation base is low. This news caused an uproar in the latent dragon camp like a volcanic eruption. Everyone became excited, especially the disciples under the age of 16. All of them rubbed their fists and were ready to jump over the dragon gate. There was actually a reason why they acted this way. It was said that no matter how weak one's strength was, as long as one was chosen by Master Baiyun, they would be able to reach the 8th layer martial vein, or even the 9th layer martial vein within a year. To many disciples who couldn't catch up in their cultivation, this was simply the best chance to change their fate. Master Baiyun was a person whom even Governor Wan Kuin and Border Garrison General Lindsay were extremely respectful towards. It showed how glorious it was to become this person's disciple. When the news spread, including Latent Dragon Camp, Heavenly Ninja Academy, and even the entire White Cloud Province, all the young practitioners under the age of 16 were so excited that they couldn't sleep. From all over White Cloud Province, there were many talented young practitioners who rushed towards Sky Cloud City. In an instant, Sky Cloud City was overcrowded and many people couldn't even enter the city. Those who were not involved could only camp outside the city, and only those talented practitioners who came to try their luck were allowed to enter the city. After the initial agitation, Ling Xiao's emotions gradually calmed down. He didn't like to hand his fate over to others. If he could become Master Baiyun's disciple, that would be the best. If not, he didn't care. He believed that with his mountain river martial spirit, he could do it better than anyone else. However, there were a few people in Latent Dragon Camp who actually broke through under the immense pressure. The most conspicuous one among them was Yin Ran. Yin Ran had broken through to the 7th level of the martial vein and was promoted to a martial master. From a martial disciple to a martial master, it seemed as though it was just a promotion of one realm, but the status in the world was totally different. Once she became a martial master, she would be revered by many. Ling Xiao personally went to congratulate Yin Ran and gave her a rare top-grade martial art. This kind of martial art didn't have much meaning to him, but to Yin Ran, it was totally different. Yin Ran urgently needed a top-grade martial art to raise her ability. After the congratulatory ceremony, Ling Xiao returned to his courtyard to continue cultivating. Even if it was just 1 day, he wasn't willing to waste any time. Snow Lotus Truth was currently his main cultivation method, so naturally he had to persevere in cultivating it. So his main body had always been cultivating this. Even though the true essence in his body was already comparable to a practitioner at the 7th level of the martial vein, but no one would complain about their own ability. After all, this was a quasi-transcendent level internal cultivation method. The sooner he cultivated it to the perfection stage, or even the perfection stage, the better it would be for him. Of the 2 doppelgangers, one of them insisted on cultivating Sky Dragon Golden Body. This was his only transcendent level martial art, so he couldn't stop cultivating it. The other doppelganger persisted in improving, Ghost Shadow Sword Technique. The power of Ghost Shadow Sword Technique was far stronger than he had imagined. Currently, Ling Xiao had only cultivated it to the perfection stage and had not entered the perfection stage yet. Even so, its attack power was already comparable to a quasi-transcendent level martial art. The next afternoon, he suddenly had a slight understanding of Ghost Shadow Sword Technique and finally stepped into the perfection stage. He also comprehended the second level of the Sure Kill skill, Giant Spirit Kill. This Sure Kill skill was used in conjunction with the Giant Sword Remnant Soul. The stronger the Giant Sword Remnant Soul was, the more powerful it would be. Compared to Shadow King Kill, it was naturally more powerful. When he used Giant Spirit Kill, the wind and clouds changed color and the heaven and earth trembled. The giant shadow in the void slashed down with its sword, and there was a faint trace of a transcendent level martial art. It could be said that the power of this move, even when facing an 8th level martial vein martial master, was completely superior. This was under the condition that the giant sword remnant soul had not turned into a complete soul and did not rely on Sky Dragon Golden Body. With Giant Spirit Kill, Shadow King Kill seemed a little useless. However, it didn't matter. Ling Xiao had modified Shadow King Kill and combined it with the Blood Saber Remnant Soul to transform it into Blood Saber Shadow King Kill. Although the power of this move was still inferior to Giant Spirit Kill, it was even more unpredictable. In the past, when Shadow King Kill was used, it relied on speed to win. But now, when Blood Saber Shadow King Kill was used, the opponent would not know where this move would come from. It was unknown how many Blood Saber afterimages would appear. A day passed very quickly. General Jiuyu announced again, "Rest well today. Tomorrow we will head to Baiyun Temple together." At this time, Ling Yixue had also come out of seclusion, although her realm was still at the middle of the 7th level of the martial vein realm. Ling Xiao felt that even if Ling Yixue met a martial artist at the peak of the 7th level of the martial vein realm, she would not be afraid. There was actually a feeling that he could not see through her. Chapter 185. Shirley, who had been in seclusion, also came out. His cultivation had reached the late stage of the 7th level of the martial vein, which was even stronger than Hua Nanin. This was probably the so-called innocence of a child, because Shirley was focused on cultivation, but Hua Nanin liked to play tricks too much, so in the end, she delayed her cultivation. She was originally stronger than Shirley. Now she was at a disadvantage. The night was cold as water, and the moon was bright in the sky. Ling Xiao stopped cultivating and invited Shirley, Yin Ran, Ling Yixue, and Cold Plum to drink tea and chat. The few of them were a little excited, including Ling Xiao. Ever since he obtained the Mountain River martial soul, his cultivation had been increasing crazily. He had trampled many geniuses who were once stronger than him. Even so, he still did not want to give up any opportunity to increase his cultivation. This was because the blue-clothed girl he met in the Dragon Submission Mountain range would often appear in his mind. That girl's cultivation was still low at that time, and the grade of her Mountain River martial soul was not high enough, so he could not determine her age. But now that he thought about it, that girl was probably not more than 20 years old. A 20-year-old transcendent warrior. Every time he thought of this, he could not calm down. However, he did not lose confidence. He only became more hard-working and diligent, and was even more unwilling to give up any opportunity. Now, how could he remain calm when he was the disciple of Master Baiyun, who had the potential to become a transcendent warrior? The young martial artists basically did not sleep the entire night. However, this was nothing to them. Once one's strength had risen to the 4th level and above, one would only need to rest for an hour to fully recover. Not to mention a martial master like Ling Xiao. In the morning, the bugle horn sounded in the military camp. Including Ling Xiao, all the disciples under the age of 16 in the latent dragon camp followed General Jiuyu to Baiyun Temple. Bayun Temple was located on Bayun Mountain, and there was only one path up the mountain. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack, and this was only on the surface. In fact, there were restrictions on this path. The selection had been going on secretly since the foot of the mountain, but many people did not know about it. As long as a martial artist didn't have perseverance and willpower, it would be impossible. Therefore, this seemingly endless path of stairs became the first hurdle for all young martial artists. Under normal circumstances, as long as a martial artist above the 4th level of the martial vein, they would be able to reach it if they persevered. However, there weren't many people who could persevere until the end. At the foot of the mountain, tens of thousands of martial artists had come to participate in the selection. But when they reached Bayun Monastery, there were less than 1,000 left. The vast majority of people couldn't even bear this bit of hardship. But thinking about it, it was normal. There were many young geniuses who were respected in their own families. They ate the best, drank the best, and used the best. Therefore, they doubted whether there was any point in suffering like this. In any case, he might not be chosen by Master Bayun. In front of the Bayun Temple was the second checkpoint. It was a test of comprehension. The Tao children brought over a stone tablet. There was a passage on it, and it contained a martial art move. Only by comprehending it would one be qualified to enter the White Cloud Temple. This was even crazier than the previous checkpoints. In the end, the 1,000 people were reduced to 50. Among them, there were 7 people from the latent dragon camp: Dayuling Ling Xiao, Shirlei, Ling Yishue, Hua Nanin, Yin Ran, and Cold Plum. The remaining 40 or so people were all disciples of the Heavenly Ninja Academy. None of the young martial artists who came from outside were left. They were all eliminated. And this was only the second checkpoint. Bayun Monastery opened. A total of 52 people entered. However, the moment they entered the Bayun Monastery, all of their breathing became rapid. In the Bayun Monastery, a terrifying aura spread out. No one told them that this was the third checkpoint. It was a test of courage, and endurance. Thump, thump. As soon as they entered the Bayun Monastery, people knelt on the ground one after another. Their faces were pale, and their bodies were drenched in cold sweat. If they just knelt, they wouldn't be eliminated. However, those who fainted were carried out directly. 1 person, 2 people, 3 people. Soon, the original 52 people became 22 people. In the latent dragon camp, Hua Nanin fainted and was eliminated. The remaining people who were eliminated were all disciples of the Heavenly Ninja Academy. The current number of people was 6 from the latent dragon camp and 16 from the Heavenly Ninja Academy. Finally, the huge pressure disappeared. 3 figures appeared in front of everyone. Lin Zhe, Wan Ben, and the Bayun Monastery's master were still in the enlightened state. These 3 people were all at the peak of the 9th level martial vein. The terrifying aura just now came from the 3 of them. It's actually them. No wonder their aura is so powerful. But the governor, the general, and the Bayun Monastery's master are all at the peak of the 9th level martial vein. They are all famous and powerful figures. Why would they be willing to help Master Bayun? If you don't know, right? Actually, these 3 can barely be considered Master Bayun's disciples. Someone from the Heavenly Ninja Academy snorted coldly. Barely? Yes, they can't be considered Master Bayun's true disciples. They can only be considered disciples. The man said complacently. What? Everyone was shocked. Including Ling Xiao, no one could believe that this was true. In the Bayun province, other than Master Bayun, these 3 people were the most famous. Moreover, their cultivation was at the peak of the 9th level martial vein. How could they not be true disciples? They could only be considered disciples. No matter how one thought about it, a disciple could not be compared to a true disciple. A disciple can only receive occasional guidance from a master, but a true disciple can cultivate with a master and receive careful guidance from a master. Whether it is resources or conditions, they are much better than a disciple. The Heavenly Ninja Academy disciple continued. Our Heavenly Ninja Academy's two super geniuses, Zuolang and Ming Tian, are Master Baiyun's true disciples. Zuolang? Ming Tian? This was the first time Ling Xiao had heard of these two people. You probably haven't heard of them. Zuolang is only 15 years old. With his cultivation at the peak of the 8th level martial vein, he can easily kill a 9th level martial vein martial master. And Ming Tian is only 16 years old. He is the only 9th level martial master under the age of 16 in the Baiyun province. Good fellow. As expected, there is always someone better. Whether it is Zuolang or Ming Tian, any one of them can easily destroy Tianfeng City. Ling Xiao could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. The warriors of Tianfeng City were still fighting among themselves. Now that he thought about it, those so-called geniuses were just a joke compared to these two people. It's a pity that these two peerless geniuses are ninja warriors. Another person sighed. Ninja warriors. Ling Xiao gritted his teeth. This was the territory of the human race. In the Baiyun province, which belonged to the human race, human warriors were actually trampled under the feet of ninja warriors. This was truly a humiliation. At this moment, Zuolang and Ming Tian were leaning against a pillar and chatting casually. One was cold, while the other was talkative. But what they had in common was that their auras were incomparably powerful. In front of them, the other geniuses seemed to be overshadowed. It was like a grain of rice competing with the bright moon. Chapter 186. Among the 22 people, only one of them still had clear eyes. That was Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao never thought that he was weaker than anyone, especially after he obtained the Mountain River Martial Soul. His cultivation speed had increased by leaps and bounds. The geniuses that were once out of his reach were all left behind by him. You should be proud to be able to come here. The 22 of you, regardless of whether you can become the master's disciple in the end, will receive a quasi-transcendent martial art as your reward. You can choose whatever you want. The Baiyun monastery master bowed to the crowd and said with a smile, "Then please follow me to the True Spirit Palace." Senior brother, I'm afraid that there are a lot of people entering the True Spirit Palace this time. I remember that back then, only 3 of us were able to make it to the end. Lindsay smiled and said to Sage E, "Yes, you're right. The young people nowadays are much stronger than us in the past. However, it's a pity that none of us were chosen as the Master's direct disciple. We were all just entry-level disciples." The Baiyun monastery master nodded, then suddenly shook his head. He was somewhat disappointed. From this, it could be seen that becoming Master Baiyun's direct disciple was really extraordinary. It's good enough to become an entry-level disciple. Wan Ren snorted coldly. He had lived for more than half of his life. He had power and strength. But the only thing he couldn't let go was that he couldn't become Master Baiyun's direct disciple. This was a sore point in his heart. But come to think of it, the reason why his life changed so much from an ordinary disciple of a small family to the current governor of Baiyun was closely related to him being accepted as an entry-level disciple by Master Baiyun. It was the same for entry-level disciples. He really couldn't imagine what a direct disciple would be like. He heard that the other 3 direct disciples of Master Baiyun had already reached the transcendent realm, but he didn't know if it was true. They followed the Baiyun monastery master through a garden and arrived at the so-called True Spirit Palace. Legend had it that Master Baiyun had an epiphany here and finally broke through the shackles to reach the transcendent realm. The True Spirit Palace had obviously been repaired and remodeled, so it was the most eye-catching building in the Baiyun monastery. Outside the True Spirit Palace, the Baiyun monastery master cupped his hands and said, "Master, there are 22 people who passed the 3 stages this time. They are all here. Please give me your orders. Come in." This voice was very amiable. It gave people the feeling that it was an amiable grandpa speaking. There was no arrogance or pressure in it at all. However, when they heard his words, it gave everyone a huge pressure. Therefore, this might was not a pretense, but a reflection of strength. Even if a transcendent warrior looked like an ordinary old man, those who knew his strength would definitely not dare to be impudent in front of him. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and followed the crowd in front of him. At this moment, a cold voice sounded in his ears. Ling Xiao, you killed my brother. I'll make you pay for this blood debt sooner or later. Flying fish? Humph, I killed your brother? You've killed hundreds and thousands of people of the Ling family and countless human warriors. How are you going to settle this debt of blood? Ling Xiao snorted and sent a secret voice-sending message. In any case, as long as one was a martial master, they would naturally be able to learn this technique. Then let's see who dies first. Because this was the true spirit palace, Flying Fish did not dare to say anything. He closed his mouth and walked into the palace. Ling Xiao did not continue to argue with him. After all, in front of a transcendent martial artist, no matter what one did, there was nothing one could hide. He had already decided that this time, no matter what, he would not use the mountain river martial spirit. This was his trump card, the best medicine for his success. He could not easily reveal it to anyone, unless one day he had enough strength to protect himself. However, it was obviously not now. The 22 young warriors who entered the palace had similar emotions as Ling Xiao. Perhaps they were even more nervous than Ling Xiao. Even Lin Zhe, Wan Ben, and the Baiyun monastery master had serious expressions and did not dare to utter a word. On the contrary, Zhuo Leng and Ming Tian did not seem to care. They were still chatting happily. A true disciple was indeed a true disciple. Even the treatment was different. That's Master Baiyun. Someone asked in astonishment. This was because Master Baiyun's image was too different from what they had imagined. In their imagination, Master Baiyun should have an extraordinary and majestic appearance. At the very least, he should have the demeanor of a master. However, in reality, this Master Baiyun was dressed like a farmer. He was even trimming a strange flower. There were 7 flowers on this flower. All of them were transparent, like crystals. There was no color, and they did not look like they were wilting. Master Baiyun rolled up his trousers. The clothes on his upper body made him look like an old farmer. He had a straw hat on his head and a tobacco pouch in his mouth. Shut up! You dare to doubt Master Baiyun? Wan Ben snorted and almost killed the young man with a slap. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Grandmaster Baiyun breathed out a smoke ring and easily blocked Wan Ben. All of you are good kids. Why do you need to make such a big fuss? Who am I to you? In your eyes, I am extraordinary and invincible. But when you truly reach my level, you will understand that this old man is simply not worth mentioning. Master Baiyun smiled and put down the scissors in his hand. He then walked over and knocked the tobacco pouch on the wall twice. After making sure that it was extinguished, he put it in his storage ring. Master, you're too modest. Wan Ben said, Modest. Master Baiyun smiled and did not refute. Instead, he looked at the 22 young men standing below. When I accept disciples, I don't care what race you are. It doesn't matter if you're a human, a ninja, or a blue-eyed clan. In the end, you're all inferior races. So, you don't have to worry about your background. As long as you have enough talent and potential, you can become my disciple. As he spoke, his gaze swept over the 22 young martial artists below the stage, like lightning. Except for Ling Xiao, everyone felt as if they were electrocuted. Their souls fluctuated violently and their minds went blank. Fortunately, Master Baiyun did not mean to hurt them. Otherwise, none of them would be alive. Master Baiyun's gaze fell on Ling Yixue. He was stunned for a moment and said, I didn't expect to meet such a genius. Interesting. Master, you found a promising talent? Lin Zhe and Wan Ben asked in unison. Unfortunately, only one of them is qualified to be my true disciple. Master Baiyun sighed. What? Hearing this, the 22 people who were full of confidence and anticipation were shocked. They were even a little angry. Master, you're right. No one dared to doubt Master Baiyun's judgment. He could see the level and talent of those people at a glance. All right, stop flattering me. I'm old and my eyesight is not good. I'll let the 7-star flower prove it. Master Baiyun was a cautious person. After all, he was selecting disciples. He did not eliminate all of them with just a glance. Chapter 187. Inside the True Spirit Palace, the atmosphere was somewhat stifling. Novel! 22 young geniuses lost their excitement after hearing Grandmaster Baiyun's words. Among these 22 people, only one was qualified to become Grandmaster Baiyun's true disciple? This was too shocking. Ling Xiao was also surprised. Although he didn't get along with many people from the Heavenly Ninja Academy, he was still surprised by some people's talents. How could only one person be qualified? But Grandmaster Baiyun couldn't be wrong. He didn't care. After all, the Mountain River Martial Spirit was so powerful that he didn't need to care too much about his master's existence. From Tianfeng City until now, he had basically been cultivating and comprehending by himself. The Mountain River Martial Spirit also helped him solve the problems he encountered in his martial arts practice. Because of this, the problems that many self-taught geniuses had not appeared in him at all. The martial arts he used were all textbook accurate. The reason why he came today was because of Grandmaster Baiyun's resources. After all, the Mountain River Martial Spirit couldn't provide him with martial arts manuals and cultivation resources for the time being. As for the others, they didn't have such a good attitude. These people had placed all their hopes of advancing to the transcendent realm on Grandmaster Baiyun. If they couldn't pass the selection, then all their efforts would have been for naught. Grandmaster, I'm only 16 years old and my cultivation has reached the peak of the 7th layer martial vein. It's only a matter of time before I break through to the 8th layer martial vein. I'm confident in this point. May I ask, why am I not qualified? Finally, someone couldn't help but ask. The one who spoke was Flying Fish. He was the strongest among the 20 people. He was closer to the 8th layer martial vein than Dai Yuling, who was also at the peak of the 7th layer martial vein. Grandmaster Baiyun didn't get angry. He only smiled and said, "You should all know that the final stage of the 9th layer martial vein is to open all 9 martial veins. Do you know what this means? This means that even if your cultivation reaches the peak of the 9th layer martial vein, it's only laying the foundation." Laying the foundation. The peak of the 9th layer martial vein is only laying the foundation? These words were too shocking. Other than Grandmaster Baiyun, no one else would dare to say such a thing. That's right, it's only the basic stage. Only by opening 9 martial veins can one leave the mortal world and truly enter the realm of cultivation. That's why you said you were already at the peak of the 7th martial veins. In fact, this only proves that your aptitude is not bad. It has a certain reference value for this old man to accept a disciple, but it's really not that big. Master Baiyun continued, "This is the reason why this old man said that there is no requirement for cultivation. As long as one is above the 4th level of the martial vein and under the age of 16, one can participate in the selection." "What about those before the 4th level of the martial vein?" a voice asked. "If you can't reach the 4th level of the martial vein at the age of 16, then you're just trash," Grandmaster Baiyun said coldly. Although this was unpleasant to hear, it was the truth. However, Ling Xiao was more concerned about the foundation stage that Master Baiyun mentioned. Martial arts had a foundation. He understood this foundation very well. That was to say, before he could completely practice martial arts, he had to temper his body. This was the case for the basic martial arts that he practiced, barbaric bull strength. Only when his physical condition reached a certain level could he practice low-level martial arts. He guessed that the foundation stage of the realm also meant this. According to this theory, even a martial artist at the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein had not entered the true stage of cultivation. It was just a process of tempering the body and developing the body's potential. Above the transcendent realm was the true cultivation. Wasn't this a little too shocking? He suddenly remembered something that Lin Zhe had told him before. In the process of opening the martial vein, there were 3 paths that could lead to the transcendent realm. Soul, inner strength, body. Simply put, it was the essence, energy, and spirit. Training any one of them to the extreme would allow one to advance to the transcendent realm. Of course, if all 3 were present, the effect would be even better. At that time, he did not understand the meaning of these words. Now he finally understood that whether it was the soul, inner strength, or body, they were all building a foundation. Only when the foundation was solid could one begin to cultivate. Some people simply pursued powerful combat techniques and rapid improvement of their cultivation, but they forgot this point. The result was that it was all for nothing. Even if one advanced to the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein, if one's essence, energy, and spirit were not strong enough, it would be impossible to advance to the transcendent realm. The so-called combat skills and cultivation were just a kind of support in order to survive. It was a method to make one's essence, energy, and spirit stronger. However, many martial artists had put the cart before the horse. Master, you keep saying that strength is not important and cultivation is not important. Then what is important? Because of Master Bai Yun's kind attitude, when Fei Yu asked, there were more people asking questions now. Everyone was not as afraid as before. Potential. Potential. To be precise, it's the potential to advance to the transcendent realm. Master Bai Yun explained, there are 3 directions to this potential. 1 is the potential of the body, the 2nd is the potential of the soul, and the 3rd is the potential of the inner strength. With potential, there will be a future. Master Bai Yun continued, after the transcendent realm, martial artists are actually divided into some special constitutions. This is the conclusion of many seniors. They believe that only with these special constitutions can one advance to the transcendent realm. When I was looking at you just now, I was trying to see if any of you had these special constitutions. Fortunately, there was one person who did. Of course, other than these special constitutions, there are also exceptions. After all, no one can understand all the special constitutions. Therefore, there is the 7-star flower. Master Bai Yun smiled, then pointed at the transparent, crystal-like flower behind him. The 7-star flower is very special. It can determine whether a martial artist has the potential to advance to the transcendent realm. It has a total of 7 flowers. As long as 5 of them light up, it means that the martial artist can advance to the transcendent realm, as long as there is no accident during the cultivation process. Oh my God, there is such a thing in this world. Ling Xiao felt that he was a little ignorant now. The outside world was really interesting. He wanted to know how much potential he had. Did he have a special constitution? Arrange for the children to take the test. You know the test method. I don't need to tell you more, right? Master Bai Yun said to Sage Yi. I will obey Master's decree. The head of the Bai Yun monastery nodded his head. Then he ordered the 22 people to line up and take the test one by one. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but the geniuses from the Heavenly Ninja Academy lined up in front, while the 6 from the Latent Dragon Camp lined up behind them. However, it didn't matter. After all, being the first to take the test wouldn't necessarily bring any benefits. How much potential one had would never change. The test method is very simple. Drip your first blood. Sage E said to Flying Fish, who was in the first place. Junior understands. Chapter 188. Sigh. I'm afraid that the only qualified person that Master Bai Yun has his eyes on is Senior Brother Fei Yu. He reached the peak of the 7th level of the martial vein at such a young age. Although strength isn't directly related to the disciple selection, if he doesn't have enough potential, he wouldn't be able to cultivate so quickly. We're here to accompany the crown prince in his studies. But it's not bad if we can become the master's disciple. It's not just not bad. General Lin and Governor Wan are both the master's disciples. If I can reach their level, I'll be very happy. Some people were discussing in low voices, but Master Bai Yin didn't stop them. Curiosity was a young man's nature, and he felt that it was lively. Fei Yu also believed that he was the only one that Master Bai Yin had his eyes on. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Then he bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood onto the 7th star flower. Wong! A strange sound was heard, and the 7th star flower began to change. The first flower was black, white, and red. The second flower was the same. When it came to the 3rd flower, only white and red were left. When it came to the 4th flower, only white was left. The 5th flower wasn't completely lit up. Only half of it was white, while the other half was still transparent. Black represents soul potential. Your soul potential is 2 stars. White represents inner strength potential. Your inner strength potential is 4.5 stars, the strongest of the 3. Red represents body potential. Your body potential is 3 stars. Sage Yun explained. Yes, 4.5 stars inner strength potential is not bad. Although you're not qualified to become this old man's direct disciple, you can still become my disciple. Master Bai Yun stroked his beard and said, "What?" Fei Yu's body suddenly took a step back, and he almost fell to the ground. This was like a bolt from the blue. He originally thought that he was the only one qualified to become Master Bai Yun's direct disciple. But now he realized that he wasn't. His expectations were too high, and so was his disappointment. So it was normal for him to have a strong reaction. Go back. Seeing Fei Yu standing there in a daze, Wan Kai coldly snorted. Only then did Fei Yu walk to the side in a daze. The arrogance from before had already been completely wiped out. No one laughed at him. Instead, because of Fei Yu's failure, many people felt even more uneasy. With Flying Fish's frightening talent, if even he was not qualified, then what about the others? The second was Heavenly Ninja Academy's Fei Lu. His cultivation was at the late stage of the 7th level martial vein. That day he had gone to Tianfeng City with Fei Yu, Fei Yun, and Fei Mu. Fei Lu was even more nervous than Fei Yu. He bit his finger a few times with trembling hands, but he couldn't bite through it. In the end, he couldn't bear to watch any longer. He casually pointed at Fei Lu's finger, and a drop of blood dripped onto the 7 stars flower. Soul potential 2 stars, internal energy potential 4 stars, physical potential 3 stars. Sage EE said faintly, 4-star inner force potential. You can make do with being an inner disciple. I'll count you in, but don't even think about becoming a true disciple. Grandmaster Bai Yun shook his head. Although he had already sensed that 21 of these people might not meet his requirements. To be honest, he still hoped that something unexpected would happen. However, after these 2 people passed, he was clearly a little disappointed. Fei Lu's performance was even worse than Flying Fish's. This was because he had once fantasized that if Flying Fish could not become a direct disciple, then that direct disciple should be him. However, the reality was too cruel. He was directly carried to the side by someone. After that, the geniuses of the Heavenly Ninja Academy were continuously tested. For the majority of the people, the highest potential they had was only 3 stars. They couldn't even reach 4 stars. However, in the end, 3 interesting geniuses appeared. Ling Xiao knew these 3 people. They were the 3 youths that had gone to the Latent Dragon Camp to spar. The fat youth's physical potential was close to 4 stars 90%, almost reaching 5 stars. This was a pleasant surprise. However, his soul and internal energy potential were only a pitiful 1 star. The lively girl's soul potential was close to 4 stars, 90%, also almost reaching 5 stars. The other 2 types of potential were also a pitiful 1 star. The lazy youth's soul potential and internal energy potential were both 4.5 stars. Only his physical potential was half a star, not even reaching 1 star. The 3 of them were fortunate enough to become Grandmaster Baiyun's inner disciples like Fei Yu and Fei Lu. At this time, Ling Xiao also learned their names. The fat youth's name was Jia Wu, the lively girl's name was Zhu Hua, and the lazy youth's name was Lu Xing. Jia Wu, Zhu Hua, your potential has shocked this old man. In the future, you'll be the top 2 among the inner disciples. If you perform well, you'll have a high chance of becoming a direct disciple. Grandmaster Baiyun had high hopes for these 2 geniuses. Although it was true that they were biased, their potential was close to 5 stars. This meant that they had the highest chance of breaking through to the transcendent realm. These 3 people's talents are much better than most of the latent dragon camp's disciples. Only they have the qualifications to become inner disciples. I'm afraid that the remaining 6 people in the latent dragon camp will suffer. Ling Xiao could not help but sigh. This was not something he wanted to see. However, he could not change one's potential. He could only accept the 7-star flower's judgment. However, Grandmaster Baiyun had just said that one of them had the qualifications to become a direct disciple. Now that the Heavenly Ninja Academy's geniuses had all been tested, there were only 6 latent dragon camp disciples left. Didn't this mean that this genius was in the latent dragon camp? At this moment, Lin Zai's face was filled with ecstasy. This was because he knew that if the latent dragon camp could produce a direct disciple of Grandmaster Baiyun, they would not be suppressed so badly by the Heavenly Ninja Academy. Wan Ben's face did not look too good. The Heavenly Ninja Academy's disciples did not look too good either. When it was the latent dragon camp's turn, the first one to take the test was Ain Ran. Ling Xiao was the temporary leader of the latent dragon camp, so he was at the back. There was only one person behind him, and that was Cold Plum. Soul, inner energy, and physical strength are all 3. 5 stars. This was Ain Ran's test result. Sai, you're too average. Actually, your talent is the most balanced. You're considered a genius among ordinary martial artists. You're still undecided. Grandmaster Baiyun sighed. He did not count Ain Ran as an inner disciple, but he did not exclude her either. It seemed like he was waiting to see how the others were doing. After Ain Ran, it was Shirley's turn. Soul and inner energy potential are 2 stars. Physical strength potential is 4 stars. You're one of the inner disciples. Grandmaster Baiyun said faintly. At this moment, he was too lazy to comment. Shirley's potential was similar to Fei Lu's, except that it was slightly weaker. After Shirley, it was Dai Yuling's turn. Oh, when Dai Yuling's blood dripped onto the 7-star flower, there was a shocking change. All of her potential is 4 stars, 90%. Gosh, she's the strongest one so far. That's right. Dai Yuling is usually quiet. I didn't expect her to have such terrifying potential. She still hasn't reached 5 stars. There are only 3 people left. I suspect that there's no one here who has the potential to reach 5 stars. Chapter 189. What's your name? This was the first time Master Baiyun took the initiative to ask for the name of a genius. Dai Yuling. That's a good name. How about this, child? I'll make an exception and let you become my true disciple. Although you don't have any potential to reach 5 stars, you can advance 3 of them simultaneously and reach 90% of 4 stars. This is also very rare. Master Baiyun said with a smile. So, she's the direct disciple that Master Baiyun mentioned. No wonder her potential is awesome. Yeah. TSK, I'm so envious. Thank you, Master. Dai Yuling was usually very calm, but today she couldn't hold back her excitement and knelt on the ground. Get up, the next one. Master Baiyun looked at Ling Yixue with a strange look in his eyes. Ling Yixue walked to the front of the 7-star flower and dripped a drop of blood calmly. In this world, other than Ling Xiao, there was nothing else that could excite her. Whoa! A terrifying sound was heard. The 7-star flower actually trembled violently. Pa! It shattered! The 7-star flower shattered? How is this possible? Everyone was dumbfounded. Even Master Baiyun was dumbfounded. He had never seen such a situation before. How did you fall into the mortal world? Master Baiyun said something inexplicable. He then sighed and said, Your potential is amazing, but this old man is not worthy to be your master. If you think highly of this old man, you can become this old man's direct disciple. Another direct disciple? This time, even Zhuolong and Ming Tian were shocked. Her soul potential exceeds 7-star, which is why the 7-star flower exploded. You might not understand, but this 7-star flower is only a tool to test the potential of a lower race. She belongs to a higher race, so she will have another test tool. Master Baiyun explained and then looked at Ling Xiao and Lung Plum. The 7-star flower shattered, so you can't complete the test. However, I still have a 7-star flower that hasn't grown yet. There are only 4 flowers. If either of you can reach 4-star potential, you'll be my direct disciple. Ling Xiao nodded and didn't object. The rest didn't dare to object. 4-star potential wasn't considered weak. As for 5-star potential, no one thought about it because Master Baiyun's eyesight wasn't bad. If Ling Xiao and Lung Plum had 5-star potential, he would definitely be able to see it. Ling Xiao walked forward and casually dripped a drop of blood on it. Master! Master Baiyun said faintly, Lindsay, I know you love talents, but it's good enough that he can become my disciple. Lin Zhe gritted his teeth and said, Master, you're being unfair. It's not his fault that the 7-star flower is broken. If he can get another 7-star flower, I believe that his potential will definitely reach 90% of 4-star. Usually, Lin Zhe wouldn't contradict his own master, but this time he was really going all out for Ling Xiao. Lin Zhe, do you think the 7-star flower is a wildflower that grows by the roadside? I've been searching for it for many years and only got 2. One is mature, and the other is just at the 4-flower level. Master Baiyun seemed a little angry. Master, you'll regret it. Lin Zhe said. Really? Then I'd like to see what he can do to make me regret it. Marshal Lin, that's enough. I'm satisfied to be Master Baiyun's disciple. I hope you won't fight because of me. Ling Xiao was touched by Lin Zhe's actions, but he could see that Master Baiyun would never agree. Instead of making a fuss, he might as well take a step back. He didn't have the 7-star flower to prove it anyway. This kid is not bad. Lin Zhe, you should learn more from this kid. Okay, next. Master Baiyun didn't want to be entangled in this issue anymore. Cold Plum walked forward and dripped a drop of blood. Soul potential, 3-star internal energy potential, 3-star body potential, 4-star. Not bad. You're qualified to be my disciple. That kid is called Ran, right? I'm sorry. You don't have a chance. Although Ran's potential was good, she was a little lacking compared to these people. Ran felt helpless, but there was nothing she could do. Okay. Ling Yixue, Daiyuling Jiawu, Zhuhua, Feiyu Ling Xiao, Feilu Lu Xing, Shirley, Cold Plum, the 10 of you stay. The rest can go and get the quasi-transcendent martial arts. The master of Baiyun Monastery said loudly. Although the rest weren't convinced, they didn't dare to behave atrociously here. Not to mention Master Baiyun, who was in the transcendent realm. Even Lin Zhe, Wan Ben, and the master of Baiyun Monastery, who were at the peak of the 9th level martial vein, could crush them with a finger. From today onwards, Ling Yixue and Dai Yuling will be my direct disciples. The other 8 will be my inner disciples. Now, acknowledge me as your master." Master Baiyun was in a good mood. He thought that only Ling Yixue could become his direct disciple. He didn't expect Dai Yuling to be so good too. This was the first time he had received 2 true disciples. Zhuoleng and Ming Tian only received their disciples after 3 years. The 10 of them performed the ceremony of acknowledging him as their master. Master Baiyun stroked his beard and looked at the other 8 indifferently. Finally, his gaze stopped on Ling Yixue and Dai Yuling, revealing a happy smile. Sure enough, although they were all disciples, the difference between a direct disciple and an inner disciple was huge. The so-called direct disciple was able to obtain Master Baiyun's inheritance. As for the inner disciples, they could only obtain some resources and occasional guidance from Master Baiyun. It was absolutely impossible for him to obtain the true inheritance of Yi Fuqian. The 8 of you remember this. Being an inner disciple is nothing. After you leave, don't say that you are my disciple. If you go against my words, you won't even have the chance to receive my guidance in the future. Do you understand? These words were a little hurtful, but Master Baiyun was absolutely serious. Most of the experts cherished their reputation. They didn't want others to say that they had picked trash as disciples. In fact, this was the case. Master Baiyun would impart his lifelong secret to Zhuoleng, Ming Tian, Ling Yixue, and Dai Yuling. They were his true disciples. As for the other 8 people, they really couldn't be considered as disciples. This was the truth. Disciple will obey master's orders. Ling Xiao and the other 8 lowered their heads and said, "All right, Lin Zhe, Wan Ben, you guys should still have things to do. Master still has some things to say to these kids." Master Baiyun heard the 8's reply and nodded with satisfaction. He then said to Lin Zhe and Wan Ben, "Yes." After Lin Zhe and Wan Ben left, the Baiyun Monastery's master still went to preside over the distribution of quasi-transcendent martial arts. In the entire True Spirit Palace, only Master Baiyun's 4 direct disciples and 8 inner disciples were left. Chapter 190. In the True Spirit Palace, Master Baiyun sat facing his 12 disciples with a warm smile on his face. Novel, today, no matter if you're a new direct disciple or a new disciple, you can ask me a question. Think carefully about what you want to ask. Of course, you can give up, but you don't have to force yourself. An expert was indeed an expert. He immediately saw through the little one's thoughts. At this moment, the little ones must have a lot of questions to ask. He gave them this opportunity to deepen the relationship between master and disciple. After all, as a transcendent saint stage martial artist, he had traveled the world and walked the path more than the little ones. It would be strange if the little ones had no questions. "Master, please explain to me about special physique." Dai Yuling was the first to ask. They had never heard of special physique before. It was only during this test that Master Baiyun mentioned it. Because of this, they were a little confused. Special physique is a miraculous physique formed when one's essence, energy, and spirit reach a certain level. Master Baiyun explained, "You all know that there are different grades for combat in this world. To a martial artist, the body is also a combat tool, and it's even more important. Therefore, it's also divided into different grades. It's also divided into treasured physique, spirit physique, and so on." Fei Yu hurriedly asked, "It should be said that there's a mortal physique in front of treasured physique. It's like a mortal weapon among weapons. It's just an ordinary weapon and an ordinary body." Master Baiyun answered, "Our world has a population of more than 100 billion. The size of our territory is beyond your imagination. In the transcendent realm, people divide these people into different grades, which are the so-called potential grades. You can say that more than 90% of the lower races are born with mortal physique. Unless they have a fortuitous encounter, their body's potential won't change. So that was the case. It was Ling Xiao's first time hearing such a thing. It was very refreshing. Mortal physique is also divided into different grades: low, intermediate, advanced, and pinnacle. Therefore, don't think that everyone has a mortal body and that everyone is the same. In fact, that's not the case. Master 7-star flower is used to test mortal bodies, low-level, middle-level, and high-level treasured bodies. 1 star is the low-level mortal physique. 2 stars is the mid-level mortal physique. 3 stars is the high-level mortal physique. 4 stars is the peak-level mortal physique, and 5 stars is the low-level treasure physique. Generally, the physique of a treasure body and above will have some special characteristics. For example, Ling Yixue's soul power is extremely strong. She can be said to be a soul body. However, as for the specific level, I dare not say. After all, a 6-star treasure body is a middle-grade treasure body, and a 7-star treasure body is a high-grade treasure body. Ling Yixue caused the 7-star flower to shatter not only because her potential exceeded that of a high-grade treasure body, but also because she was unable to control her own potential. Otherwise, even if her potential exceeded that of a 7-star treasure body, it wouldn't have shattered. On this point, Ling Xiao and Cold Plum did a better job. Their potential should be above 4 stars and below 5 stars. However, they didn't shatter the 7-star flower, which only had 4 flowers. This means that their control of their potential is very good. Of course, Master has also taken some precautions. In short, as long as you can achieve a treasure body, you'll have an innate advantage in cultivation. At the very least, on the path of martial arts, it will be easier for you to break through compared to a mortal body. As long as you are willing to work hard, you will definitely be able to break through to the transcendent realm. It is only a matter of time. However, it is different for a mortal body. Whether you can break through to the transcendent realm or not depends entirely on luck. The biggest possibility is that you will not be able to break through even if you cultivate hard for a lifetime. Master, you just said that potential is innate, but it can also be changed? Ling Xiao asked a question that was very important to him. He felt that before he obtained the mountain river martial spirit, his potential was only at the peak level mortal physique. He really couldn't reach the treasure body. However, after obtaining the mountain river martial spirit, the situation was very different. Therefore, he had to ask this question clearly. Of course, there are already many people who have changed their potential through hard work. However, it is very difficult. It can even be said that there is a slim chance of survival. Master Bai Yun nodded and said, "Some special spiritual herbs, special bloodlines, and special martial spirits can change a martial artist's potential." Thank you for your explanation, Master. Although Master Bai Yun didn't explain it in detail, Ling Xiao already got the answer he wanted and was satisfied. Although he was very clear that his cultivation speed was accelerated because of the mountain river martial spirit, he didn't understand why. Now he understood that the mountain river martial spirit had changed his potential. As for what level of potential he had now, even he didn't know. It would be great if he could repair the 7-star flower. Ling Xiao thought of his mountain river martial spirit. It had the ability of production and creation, and there was a branch under the creation ability, which was maintenance. Later, he would try to see if he could get the fragments of the 7-star flower. If he could, then perhaps he would know his current potential. While he was thinking about the 7-star flower, several people had already asked questions. When he came back to his senses, Ling Yixue was already asking questions. Master, we all know that above the peak of the 9th level martial vein is the transcendent sage realm. However, are there any other realms above the transcendent sage realm? In fact, everyone present had thought about this question. Was the path of martial arts endless? Yes. Master Bai Yun gave an affirmative answer. However, I have yet to touch that stage, so I can't explain it clearly. It's like when you were at the 1st or 2nd level martial vein. You had never heard of the transcendent sage realm. Even if you had heard of it, you wouldn't understand it at all. Ling Xiao could understand what he said. When he was only at the first level martial vein, he only hoped to become a martial disciple and advance to the fourth level martial vein. Later, he obtained the mountain river martial spirit, and his cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. Only then did he have the idea of advancing to martial master and even the peak of the ninth level martial vein. Later on, he finally met a transcendent sage, realm expert, and his horizons were broadened. The transcendent sage realm was still a place they couldn't touch, let alone the realms above it. Therefore, Master Bai Yun couldn't answer them. Master, can you give us some suggestions for our cultivation? How can we maximize our chances of advancing to the transcendent sage realm? Zhu Hua's question was also considered a crucial one, and many people were concerned about it. Her soul potential was at 90% of 4 stars, very close to 5 stars. In other words, her physique was extremely close to a treasure body, and it was very possible for her to advance to the transcendent sage realm. The purpose of asking this question was naturally to know what they needed to pay attention to in their current cultivation so that it might be easier to advance in the future. Focus on your specialty, reduce your obsession with techniques and killing, and try to focus on soul cultivation. Chapter 191. Although Master Bai Yun's suggestion was correct, it was still possible to focus on one aspect and advance to the transcendent realm before developing the other two. However, Ling Xiao had a different idea. He felt that since the 9th level of the martial vein was the foundation stage, if he did that, he would definitely become crippled. Once he advanced to the transcendent realm, there would definitely be a huge drawback. Therefore, he decided to focus on his soul, inner strength, and body. After all, he had always been doing this. Soul ignition art, snow lotus truth, and heavenly dragon golden body. Together with his shadow cultivation secret technique, he could definitely achieve the same level of development. All right, the questions are over. You can all go back and prepare to move to Baiyun Temple. This place is more free and quieter. It's more suitable for cultivation. After the 12 people finished their questions, Master Bai Yun waved his hand and said, "Master, this disciple has a presumptuous request. I hope you can agree to it." Ling Xiao did not forget his thoughts. "Speak. Can I have the fragments of the 7-star flower?" Ling Xiao asked. "Ling Xiao, are you crazy? How dare you make such an unreasonable request?" Fei Yu questioned. He was really afraid that Ling Xiao would offend Master Bai Yun and cause them, the new disciples, to be kicked out. "It's fine. Can you tell me, what do you want those fragments for?" Master Bai Yun waved his hand and signaled Fei Yu to stop talking. He then looked at Ling Xiao and asked, "This disciple is just curious." Of course, Ling Xiao would not tell the truth. "Forget it. It's impossible to save the shattered 7-star flower anyway. If you like it, take it." Master Bai Yun glanced at Ling Xiao. To be honest, he felt that this young man was a little strange. He clearly saw through everything, but he felt uneasy, as if he was missing something. He was probably overthinking it. He was just a young man without any special constitution. Even if he had something special, so what? With a bitter smile, Master Bai Yun simply agreed to Ling Xiao's request. In fact, it was just as he had said. The shattered 7-star flower was no different from ordinary glass shards. Ling Xiao carefully placed all the fragments of the 7-star flower into his storage ring. He did not dare to casually open his mountain river world here for fear that Grandmaster Bai Yun would discover it. The mountain river martial spirit was too miraculous. He was afraid that Grandmaster Bai Yun would be greedy, which would be troublesome. After the 10 new disciples left, Master Bai Yun looked at Ming Tian and Zhuolong, who were still in the True Spirit Palace, and said, "The 2 of you have been following me for 3 years. You have performed very well in all aspects. From today onwards, I will impart to you too an absolute art. You must learn it well." Zhuolong and Ming Tian looked at each other with joy on their faces. In the past 3 years, Although they had received a lot of pointers from Grandmaster Bayun and learned a lot of things, they had not learned Grandmaster Bayun's true secret technique. This transcendent warrior was very cautious. Even if it was a true disciple, he still had to test loyalty and other factors. 3 years was a transition period. Other than Ling Yixue, the 10 people who had become his disciples today were actually not worth mentioning when compared to the 2 youths in front of them. Ling Yixue was a little special. He did not intend to impart any absolute art to her. Naturally, he had other intentions for keeping her by his side. After walking out of the true spirit palace, Fei Yu immediately blocked Ling Xiao's path. Ling Xiao, you are crazy. We have finally become Grandmaster Bayun's disciples. How dare you ask for anything from him? Do you want to cause everyone to be driven away? At this moment, Ling Xiao's mind was focused on the mountain river world. His soul had already entered the mountain river world and was studying how to repair the 7-star flower. According to his analysis, the 7-star flower could be repaired through the creation ability, but it required some materials. 1 fine grade artifact, 100 Orochi pills, 1 Millennium Snow Lotus, and 10 natural crystals. This was the list given to him by the Mountain River Martial Spirit. He had the Orochi pills and the Millennium Snow Lotus. What he lacked now were fine grade artifacts and natural crystals. The ice glass, sword, and breeze sword in his hands were only mortal grade artifacts. They were definitely not enough. As for natural crystals, they were not that expensive. 1 piece was 1,000 gold taels. 10 pieces would be 10,000 gold taels. He could afford it. The problem was that natural crystals were hard to come by, especially the higher grade ones. Ling Xiao, I am asking you a question. Seeing that Ling Xiao did not reply for a long time, Fei Yu was clearly annoyed. Ling Xiao came back to his senses and looked at Fei Yu. If he is going to drive us away because of such a small matter, then Grandmaster Bayun is only SOO. Do you think Grandmaster is that kind of person? You are twisting words and forcing logic. Fei Yu roared. I am twisting words and forcing logic? Am I asking for too much? It is just some fragments of the 7-star flower. Do you dare to swear that you will not ask Grandmaster for anything in the future? Ling Xiao asked indifferently. Of course. Fei Yu did not dare to swear. He wanted to become Grandmaster Bayun's disciple. Naturally, he wanted to obtain benefits from Grandmaster Bayun. If he did not ask for anything, then what was the point? He was just using Ling Xiao as a pretext to make a fuss. You what? If you have nothing to say, then get out of my way. I still have things to do. Ling Xiao was not afraid of Fei Yu at all. Although Fei Yu was a peak 7th level martial vein martial master, and he did not have much confidence in winning, it was still impossible for Fei Yu to injure him. I really don't know what you are so arrogant about. You are merely 4.5 stars. You are not even comparable to Jiawu and Zhu Hua, not to mention senior brothers Wulong and senior brother Mingtian. Fei Yu coldly snorted. That's right. Among all of you, only Ling Yixue is passable. However, Ling Yixue's control of her potential is too weak. Fei Lu also stood out and said, You should know that when senior brothers Wulong and senior brother Mingtian took the test, their potential reached 7 stars. Moreover, their 7-star flowers did not shatter. Their potential is not inferior to Ling Yixue's, but their control is better. Did you hear that? If you have potential but can't control it, then you can't use it. It is meaningless. Fei Yu looked at Ling Xiao and sneered. Don't think that you can do anything just because your cultivation has increased quickly. If your potential is not good enough, then you will never be able to reach the Transcendent Saint stage. So, you should learn to be obedient in front of us. Is that so? I really want to see who will be the first to break through to the Transcendent Saint stage. Fei Lu and Fei Yu's words shocked the other geniuses. However, Ling Xiao was different. Although he was a little surprised, he did not feel bad about it. Instead, it aroused his fighting spirit. Shameless boasting, Fei Yu said disdainfully. Ling Xiao did not say anything and continued to walk out of the Baiyun monastery. When the group arrived outside the Baiyun monastery, they realized that there were many people standing outside. Among them were the latent dragon camps Yin Ran and Huananin, as well as the heavenly ninja academies Li Xinghui and Shi Yulian. In addition, Lin Zhe Wanben, the Baiyun monastery's Taoist Rani, and the Nine Moons general were also there. Ling Xiao even saw his old enemies, Shilong and Li Yunsheng. They were now following Wanben to do things for the ninja clan. Ling Xiao, I challenge you. Chapter 192. Li Xinghui had long hated Ling Xiao during the Heaven Peak Cities tournament. Later on, he found out that his brother Li Xingyun was killed by Ling Xiao. Even when Li family's practitioners besieged Ling Xiao that day, many of them died in Ling Xiao's hands. So, Li Xinghui had always wanted to take revenge. He came to Sky Cloud City earlier than Ling Xiao and broke through to the 7th level of the martial vein earlier. After all, when they were in Heaven Peak City, his cultivation was much higher than Ling Xiao's, and he was already at the 6th level of the martial vein peak. Adding on to the fact that, after the test, his potential wasn't considered low. All 3 categories were 3 stars, 90%. Among the ordinary practitioners, he was considered to have high aptitude, which was close to the peak. After coming to Sky Cloud City, he received Wanrin and Sky Ninja Academy's nurturing. Now that his cultivation was at the 7th level of the martial vein middle stage, he was confident that he had already surpassed Ling Xiao. He hated that Ling Xiao had always been hiding in the latent dragon camp, so he didn't have the chance to seek revenge on Ling Xiao. Today they met here, and his potential was even lower than Ling Xiao's, so how could he possibly give up on this opportunity? Ling Xiao was about to reject when he suddenly thought of the materials he needed to restore the 7-star flower and changed his mind. You can challenge me, but there has to be a reward. Tell me, Li Xinghui said. 1 fine quality treasure and 10 natural crystals. Ling Xiao didn't ask for much. As long as he could gather the materials, he would be able to restore the 7-star flower. All right, I promise you. But we have to go up to White Cloud Observatory's Life and Death Cliff and sign the life and death contract. We will fight to the death. Li Xinghui gritted his teeth. Have you thought it through? Ling Xiao wasn't the kind of person who killed indiscriminately. He killed Li Xingyun because Li Xingyun killed his family. He killed Li family's practitioners because Li family's practitioners had besieged his family. But Li Xinghui didn't have any deep hatred with him, and it wasn't to the point where they would fight to the death. Why are you afraid? Li Xinghui said coldly. Is the latent dragon camp's commander-in-chief such a coward? That's right, that's right. Latent Dragon Camp is full of cowards. Coward! Many geniuses from the Heavenly Enduring Academy began to jeer. Wanben also said, as a warrior, you should disregard life and death. Only when you are between life and death can you have a breakthrough. I say, Lin Zhe, this disciple of yours doesn't look like much. He's just kind-hearted and doesn't want to kill too much. Lin Zhe said calmly. Ha ha ha, I think he's just afraid of death. Wanben mocked. Fine, since you want to die so badly, I'll fulfill your wish. Go to the life and death cliff and sign the life and death letter. However, I'll add one more item to the prize, and that is a quasi-transcendent martial arts technique. No problem. Wanben answered for Li Xinghui. Today I am here. If Li Xinghui dies, I will give you what he owes. With Lord Governor's words, Ling Xiao can rest assured. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. Then he and Li Xinghui signed the life and death agreement in front of everyone. After that, everyone went to the White Cloud Monastery's life and death cliff. This life and death cliff was originally a place used by Sky Cloud City to settle disputes. If the law couldn't solve the problem, then they would use force to solve it. On the life and death cliff, regardless of life or death, no one needed to be responsible. Ling Xiao stood there and almost became everyone's focus. Even Master Bai Yun, Zhuo Leng, and Ming Tian, who were in the True Spirit Hall, were watching this battle through a special mirror. I've long heard that there's a 14-year-old genius in the latent dragon camp called Ling Xiao. Is that him? That's right. He's only 14 years old, and he's already a martial master. This kind of innate talent is really shocking. No wonder he was chosen by Master Bai Yun as his disciple. I heard that he seems to be able to use many kinds of martial arts, remnant soul. I wonder if it's true. It should be true. This kind of rumor isn't baseless. After all, he's the one who defeated Lu Xing. Li Xinghui had also defeated Lu Xing before, so there's nothing to be proud of. Well, that's right. When Li Xinghui had just advanced to the early 7th level of the martial vein, his strength had already surpassed Lu Xing's. Coupled with the cultivation of Governor Wanben, he's now a mid-7th level martial vein martial master. His strength is definitely above Lu Xing's. I've also heard that Li Xinghui would have been sent out if it weren't for the fact that the latent dragon camp was too weak. I didn't expect Lu Xing to suffer a loss. If I had known earlier, I would have sent Li Xinghui. Yes, potential doesn't represent strength. Ling Xiao's potential may be higher than Li Xinghui's, but his strength is definitely not as good as Li Xinghui's. It'll be a pity if he dies today. Do you think Master Bai Yun will intervene? If Ling Xiao was a true disciple, it might be possible. However, he's not. Master Bai Yun has never cared too much about his disciples. This was obviously what someone who knew the inside story said. In any case, in today's battle, although there were a few people who supported Ling Xiao, most people didn't think that Ling Xiao would win. Especially in the life and death battle, Li Xinghui was too brutal. He displayed his animal martial soul to the fullest. They felt that it was a pity that Ling Xiao's potential was higher than Li Xinghui's. In the future, he would definitely surpass Li Xinghui. It would be a pity if he died here today. Listening to the crowd's discussion, Ling Xiao had an impulse to laugh. Most of these people were seeing him for the first time. Hadn't they heard that he had defeated Li Xinghui in Tianfeng City? He would never lose to someone who had won once. Ling Xiao, your potential is indeed good. I didn't expect that you're stronger than me. Li Xinghui stood there and looked coldly at Ling Xiao. He said, however, you have to understand that no matter how strong your potential is, you'll still die if you don't have strength. In his eyes, it was as if Ling Xiao had already become a corpse. Ling Xiao said indifferently, you're right. Without strength, it's useless no matter how good your potential is. If you die, you'll have nothing left. It's a pity that you're the only one who will die today. Shameless boasting, Li Xinghui shouted. Don't think that you can still defeat me today just because you've defeated me before. With your strength, you'll only be an average disciple in the Sky Ninja Academy. The latent dragon camp is not even worth mentioning. Wanben was probably the one who ordered Li Xinghui to belittle the latent dragon camp in front of Lin Zhe. Lin Zhe was unhappy, but he couldn't be calculative with a level 7 martial master. He could only hold back his anger for the time being. Seeing Lin Zhe's expression, Wanben laughed secretly. He pretended to glare at Li Xinghui and said, "Nonsense. How can the latent dragon camp's strength be slandered by a brat like you? Although they lost the sparring matches at the end of the month, you can't say that." Li Xinghui said indifferently, "I'm frank and outspoken. I'm just speaking the truth. If I've offended General Lin and the latent dragon camp, please forgive me." Frank and outspoken. Ling Xiao was the commander-in-chief of the latent dragon camp, and he respected Lin Zhe. Li Xinghui's slandering of Lin Zhe and the latent dragon camp had already made him very unhappy. Hee, I wanted to give you a chance because it wasn't easy for you to cultivate to the martial master realm. However, your words have already made me very unhappy. If I can't defeat you in 6 moves, I'll kill myself on the spot. Ling Xiao's words were cold and resolute. However, as soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Chapter 193. Hearing that Ling Xiao could defeat Li Xinghui in 6 moves, Lin Zhe shook his head and sighed. General Yu smiled bitterly. Ling Xiao is still too young. That's why he's so impulsive. It's not worth it. If he can't win in 6 moves, is he really going to commit suicide? That's not worth it. I don't think so. Ling Yixue's cold eyes were filled with conviction. She and Ling Xiao came here from the Ling family in Tianfeng City, so she knew Ling Xiao better than anyone else. General Yu shook his head and smiled bitterly. Miss Yixue, do you really think that Ling Xiao can defeat Li Xinghui in 6 moves? That's not possible. Although I'm not happy if I'm not wrong, Li Xinghui is much stronger than Shi Lei and Hua Nanin in our latent dragon camp. I remember that Ling Xiao defeated Hua Nanin in 50 moves, right? Ling Yixue didn't say anything, but she smiled lightly. When Ling Xiao fought Hua Nanin, he was only training himself. Otherwise, he would have finished her in 10 moves. The current Ling Xiao was more than twice as strong as before. No one was optimistic about Ling Xiao's chances. Even the geniuses from the latent dragon camp were shaking their heads secretly. They felt that Ling Xiao was too arrogant. He was usually a steady person, so why was he so different today? On the Heavenly Ninja Academy side, Fei Yu and Fei Lu were sneering. They wanted to avenge Fei Mu and Fei Yun, but they didn't expect Ling Xiao to be so stupid and arrogant. It seemed that this idiot was going to commit suicide today. Such a way of dying was not only stupid, but also embarrassing. It was the biggest joke in the world. Lu Xing, who had fought with Ling Xiao, also muttered, "He really doesn't know what's good for him." He had fought with both Ling Xiao and Li Xinghui, so he knew their strength very well. In his opinion, Ling Xiao might be able to defeat Li Xinghui, but in 6 moves, he was simply too arrogant. In the latent dragon camp, Shi Lei and the others hoped that Ling Xiao could really defeat Li Xinghui in 6 moves. After all, Li Xinghui's words were too harsh. He did not take the latent dragon camp seriously at all. However, even they felt that it was very unlikely. Such arrogance! Li Xinghui roared, and his clothes fluttered without wind. The silhouette of a white tiger became clearer and clearer behind him. Then a white light burst out from his body. His feet moved, and a crack appeared on the solid rock floor. Then he pounced forward like a ferocious beast. His hands were like tiger claws as he suddenly grabbed at the air. Kacha! The air was torn apart by the tiger claws, and the silver-white light claws flew out from his hands. Then they turned into 4 or 5 times the size of a tiger claw in the air and covered Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao was standing there. He had no intention of dodging or retreating. His originally ordinary aura suddenly became fierce. Behind him, the silhouette of the blood knife ancestor became clearer, especially the ancestor's eyes, which were filled with evil charm. It was obvious that he was someone who did not play according to common sense. Oh my God! Both of their incomplete martial souls have reached 70%. They're on par with each other. A cry of surprise broke out from the crowd. It had to be said that Li Xinghui's improvement was very fast. When he was in Tianfeng City, his incomplete martial soul was only 10%. Now it had reached 70%. However, it seemed that his incomplete martial soul was not very stable. He must have used some medicine to forcefully increase it. After all, Wan Qi was the governor of Baiyun province. He had more resources than Lin Zhe. Moreover, he had the ninja tribe and the Blue Eyes tribe behind him. At this moment, Ling Xiao did not care about the shouts in the crowd. He unsheathed the ice-glazed sword, and waves of terrifying sword qi gushed out from his body. He seemed to have turned into a sharp sword and was constantly accumulating power. He was waiting for a terrifying explosion of power. First move! Ling Xiao stabbed out with his sword. As he shouted, his figure became unpredictable. His sword's momentum was also erratic. His figure was like a ghost. It was completely illogical. Rip! The silver-white tiger claw directly pierced through Ling Xiao's body. However, it was just a meaningless afterimage. Bang! Behind the afterimage, a huge rock was crushed. It was enough to show the terrifying power of Li Xinghui's claw. However, the crowd did not have time to be surprised because Ling Xiao's sword had already stabbed towards Li Xinghui's heart from a strange angle. Since it was a battle of life and death, Ling Xiao did not intend to be merciful. Being merciful in such a battle was simply courting death. After all, Li Xinghui still had the ability to kill him. How can this sword technique be so strange? Li Xinghui was shocked. He did not expect that there would be such a terrifying and strange sword technique in this world. It was clearly him who had made the first move and was about to hit Ling Xiao. However, in the blink of an eye, the situation had changed. Ling Xiao had seized the opportunity to take the initiative, and he was now in a passive position. However, at this time, even though he was shocked, he had no time to marvel. Danger was in front of him. He frantically accelerated the circulation of the vital essence in his body. Purple crystal divine skill! With a roar, the vital essence in Li Xinghui's body quickly gathered in front of his chest. After the silver-white light converged, it quickly condensed into a strange, beautiful, crystal-like shield. This shield was diamond-shaped and looked as thick as a solid object. It did not look like it was condensed to vital essence at all. He believed that its defense would not be low. At the same time, Li Xinghui's whole body was wrapped in a layer of purple-blue aura. This was also the effect of the purple crystal divine skill. A disdainful sneer appeared on Ling Xiao's face when he saw this. The ice glass sword in his hand did not change. However, this sword had condensed more snow lotus vital essence, and its penetrating power became even more terrifying. Chi! The seemingly thick purple crystal shield did not have the slightest effect and was instantly pierced by the sword. Then the purple crystal shield shattered like glass. It did not have any blocking effect at all. Impossible! How could the purple crystal shield be broken? Due to his excitement, Wanben actually couldn't help but smash a huge rock beside him with his palm. The rock fragments flew, scaring the nearby Heavenly Ninja Academy disciples into hurriedly retreating. However, there were still a few people who were covered in blood. It was no wonder that Wanben had lost his composure. The purple crystal divine skill was a top-grade defensive martial art in Heavenly Ninja Academy. It could be said that even a quasi-transcendent martial art could resist for a long time. It was impossible for a martial artist of the same realm to break this purple crystal shield in a short time. However, the reality was that Ling Xiao, who was at the early 7th stage of the martial vein realm, had broken the defensive martial art that Heavenly Ninja Academy was so proud of with a single sword. His true yuan should be all quasi-transcendent true yuan now. The Baiyun monastery master was still a Taoist master. He could be considered a bystander and said softly to Wanben, "Those shattered rocks did not pose any threat to him, so he did not move at all." Quasi-transcendent vital essence? This kid actually cultivated a quasi-transcendent internal strength mental cultivation method? Wanben was taken aback again. Heavenly Ninja Academy also had quasi-transcendent internal strength mental cultivation methods, but it was not something that could be cultivated. Cultivating quasi-transcendent martial arts, if one's aptitude was not at the peak of the mortal body, then the possibility of failure was very high. There was even a possibility of cultivation deviation. Chapter 194. Get out of my way! Li Xinghui roared. The purple crystal true yuan condensed around his body to a single point, finally slowing down Ling Xiao's sword attack and preventing his heart from being pierced. Not only that, the furious Li Xinghui tried to reverse the situation. His left hand controlled the purple crystal True Yuan, while his right hand formed a tiger claw. Then, with a terrifying tiger roar, he directly grabbed at Ling Xiao's head. Strong winds wreaked havoc. Ling Xiao felt a sharp pain on his face, as if the skin on his face was being torn apart. Even his hair was blown up. However, his opponent could attack with his bare hands. He could do the same. Meteor strike. Boom! The energy that was originally exploding in all directions was forcibly condensed together by Ling Xiao using a mysterious method. It looked like a black hole swallowing a meteor. The originally large-range attack instantly became a one-on-one fixed-point attack. A terrifying amount of true essence condensed on Ling Xiao's left fist, and he punched out with a ferocious fist force. It collided with Li Xinghui's claw. Above their heads, an illusory white tiger and an illusory blood knife ancestor clashed. There was no instant explosion, as if they were devouring each other. Terrifying energy continuously surged out from their bodies. At this time, the terrifying aspects of Ling Xiao's True Yuan and martial soul were revealed. His True Yuan was the quasi-transcendent Snow Lotus True Yuan. In the process of confrontation, it constantly froze Li Xinghui's True Yuan, causing the True Yuan that his opponent could use to decrease. Not only that, but the Mountain River martial soul's ability to devour True Yuan was also devouring Li Xinghui's True Yuan and transforming it into Ling Xiao's own True Yuan. As a result, the collision that seemed to be evenly matched at first finally erupted in an instant. Boom! A thunderous sound exploded between the two of them. The purple-blue light and the snow-white light collapsed, shooting in all directions. Not only was the momentum great, but the scene was also shocking. Not good. The spectators hurriedly blocked the overflowing aura. Those who were strong set up a thick True Yuan shield in front of them, blocking the impact of the terrifying aura. As if a crossbow arrow had shot at the shield, it actually made raindrops smashing sound, and the shield was also constantly shaking. Those who were weaker could not block it and could only turn around and fly away, avoiding the terrifying aura. Even so, many people were still injured. On the life and death cliff, regardless of life and death. This was not only for the two parties, but also for the spectators. To die here. To be more precise, it was Li Xinghui who suddenly retreated because he had suffered a great loss in the battle. Ling Xiao only slightly calmed his chaotic true essence before thrusting his sword out once again. Due to the increase in his strength and the change in his Yunyuan, the might of his previous sword moves had increased significantly. The way? Damn it! Li Xinghui had just stood firm, and before he had time to think about what to do, he saw Ling Xiao's attack coming again. He was helpless. Even though he was furious, he was suppressed by his opponent. He really had nowhere to vent his anger. At this time, he could only urge all the True Yuan in his body and completely condense it on his legs. He then flew up and kicked Ling Xiao's sword aura. Crackle! The True Yuan on Li Xinghui's legs was broken again, and the remaining sword aura went up, injuring Li Xinghui's meridians. Not only that, but the ice glass sword also left a deep wound on Li Xinghui's right leg. The two staggered, and Ling Xiao's ghostly figure finally appeared again. The continuous attacks did not kill Li Xinghui, so he had to take a rest. Am I seeing things? This is too unbelievable. The two have only exchanged 3 moves, and Li Xinghui was seriously injured. Could it be that Ling Xiao really has the strength to kill Li Xinghui in 6 moves? It's too scary. The quasi-transcendent True Yuan is more terrifying than I imagined. True Yuan against True Yuan. How terrifying would it be if it was transcendent True Yuan? It's not just about True Yuan. Didn't you guys notice that Ling Xiao is much better than Li Xinghui in terms of timing and flaws? This guy is too calm in the battle. It's so calm that it makes people's scalp numb. There are still 3 moves left. Li Xinghui can still take it. This guy is also very fierce. If he really can't take it, not only will he lose face, but he will also lose his life. He was so sarcastic to the laden dragon camp before, but he was killed in 6 moves. Even if he dies, I'm afraid his reputation will spread far and wide. Yeah, if he can't take it, he'll die and his reputation will spread far and wide. If he can take it, he'll die and his reputation will spread far and wide. Everything depends on these 3 moves. Seeing Li Xinghui's right leg bleeding and blood spurting out from his mouth, the spectators were all shocked. Even Lin Zhe and Wan Ben were shocked. In the true spirit palace, Master Bai Yun also frowned. He did not expect Ling Zhao's fighting style to be so extraordinary. Although he did not have any advantage in terms of martial technique or strength, he was able to suppress his opponent as if he could see through all of his opponent's attacks. Did this old man really do something wrong? Master Bai Yun did not listen to Lin Zhe and did not choose Ling Xiao as a pro-disciple. He was really confused now. Although transcendent realm martial artists looked high and mighty, they were just newcomers on another level who had just entered the cultivation realm. It was normal for them to have poor judgment. Ling Xiao. Li Xinghui's open wound was healing at an accelerated rate. This was the terrifying part of an animal-type martial soul. It had an extremely strong resistance and recovery ability. However, Li Xinghui's martial soul was still a remnant soul, so its recovery ability was not too strong. It could only stop the bleeding now. If it was a complete martial soul, its recovery ability would not be inferior to the 9 transformation golden body techniques, 9th transformation limb, regrowth. Li Xinghui stopped the bleeding and roared at Ling Xiao. You want to kill me in 6 moves? Dream on. I'll make you cut your throat on the spot. His eyes were red as if a fire was burning. The remaining sword qi in his body was completely shattered by him. He just stared at Ling Xiao, and the aura on his body became stronger and stronger. The white tiger phantom behind him condensed a little more. The terrifying beast-like aura became even stronger. Looking at it, Li Xinghui was just like a white tiger, opening his bloody maw and staring at Ling Xiao, incomparably ferocious. Due to the pressure of survival, Li Xinghui forced out his potential at this critical moment and forcibly perfected his martial path remnant soul to 80%. An 80% martial path remnant soul was very close to a complete soul. The terrifying aura completely suppressed Ling Zhao's 70% martial path remnant soul. Die. Chapter 195. Roar. The image of a white tiger flew out from his body. The terrifying aura tore the rocks on the life and death cliff apart as if it had been scratched by the tiger's claws. The surrounding air was instantly shattered like glass, forming a temporary vacuum zone. Ha ha ha! 80% martial path remnant soul. This time, Ling Xiao is dead for sure. Let alone defeating Li Xinghui in 6 moves, he will lose this time. Flying Fish laughed excitedly. The pressure of an 80% martial path remnant soul was too shocking. In the entire Heavenly Ninja Academy, other than the ninja warriors who had a complete ninja soul, this was the strongest martial path remnant soul. He didn't even want to blink. He wanted to see Ling Xiao get swallowed by the huge white tiger and torn to pieces. Wan Ben also revealed a satisfied smile. Ling Xiao, who had terrifying potential, followed Lin Zhe. Sooner or later, he would be a threat to the Heavenly Ninja Academy. Now that he was killed, it was definitely a good thing for him. On the latent dragon camp side, Lin Zhe, General Yu Yu, and the others didn't look too good. Ling Xiao originally had a huge advantage, but now that Li Xinghui's martial path remnant soul had a sudden breakthrough, they started to worry again. On the other hand, Ling Yixue still had a confident expression. She believed that Ling Xiao had expected this before the battle. To others, Li Xinghui's martial path remnant soul breakthrough was an accident. But to Ling Xiao, this was completely within his calculations. Many people thought that Ling Xiao's most terrifying aspect was his potential. However, Ling Yixue knew that they were all wrong. Ling Xiao's most terrifying aspect was his calculations. Good. Just as Ling Yixue said, Ling Xiao had already calculated that Li Xinghui's martial path remnant soul would break through. Not only did he calculate it, but he also continuously attacked to force the martial path remnant soul to break through. The stronger the martial path remnant soul was, the more pressure he would feel. Taking advantage of this pressure, he made a breakthrough in his cultivation. Originally, he had been cultivating for the past few days, and his cultivation had already shown signs of a breakthrough. But he lacked an opportunity. Today's opportunity was created by him. Of course, it could also be said that Li Xinghui delivered himself to him. Facing this incomparably terrifying attack, Ling Xiao's true yuan began to circulate crazily. A certain barrier in his seventh martial vein was forcefully broken. At this moment, the long-awaited breakthrough had finally arrived. And Li Xinghui was just a poor martial path remnant soul. It wasn't that his martial Dao remnant soul had broken through, but that his cultivation had risen from the early 7th level of the martial vein to the middle 7th level of the martial vein. It seemed like a small breakthrough, but what it brought to him was a sudden surge in his strength. Thank you, brotherly. Looking at Li Xinghui, Ling Xiao revealed a sincere smile. The Zhen Yuan in his body circulated and a vigorous aura covered his entire body. Wan's martial path was Ling death because, especially this kid scheming, he had completely played Li Xinghui in the palm of his hand. Li's death? How could he swallow this as the dignified Governor Baiyun? Ha ha ha, this kid made me worry for nothing. Looks like there's no need to worry about him. He's the most reliable one. Lin Zhe could also see that Ling Xiao had broken through, and it was a planned breakthrough. He couldn't help but laugh. He was in an incomparably good mood. General Nine Moons was also in a daze. He muttered to himself, I knew that Ling Xiao's talent was amazing, but I didn't expect him to have reached this stage. If Li Xinghui's remnant soul breakthrough during the battle was shocking, then what Ling Xiao was doing now was simply a pioneering work. Breaking through under great pressure. This kind of thing had always happened occasionally, but it was also very rare. However, the fact that great pressure could help a cultivator break through was something that countless cultivators had proven one after another. However, he had never seen anyone who could completely control this kind of pressure in their hands without wasting any of it. Today was an eye-opener for him. What was more amazing was that Ling Xiao's breakthrough of a small realm produced a terrifying pressure that was even more terrifying than many cultivators' breakthrough of a large realm. This showed that Ling Xiao's cultivation was too solid. Step by step, there was absolutely no emptiness. Boom! He took a step forward. The shadow behind Ling Xiao changed. It changed from the blood blade remnant soul to the giant sword remnant soul. The soaring sword, intent, soared again. A terrifying sword qi pierced the clear sky, dispersing the clouds in the sky. He really has two kinds of martial path remnant souls. I thought it was just a rumor. It's too terrifying. Two kinds of martial path remnant souls that are 70% complete. Is this kid a monster? Seeing that Ling Xiao suddenly changed his martial path remnant soul, the crowd exclaimed again. Master, what's going on? Didn't you say that a cultivator can only have one kind of soul assistance? In the true spirit palace, Zuolong looked at Master Baiyun in shock and asked, but why does he have two kinds of martial path remnant souls? This doesn't make sense. Master Baiyun was also somewhat puzzled. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. I'm also a little confused. Maybe it's because his body structure is different from ordinary people. Even if it was a transcendent realm cultivator, he could only use such a deceptive explanation. It wasn't that he was weak. but that the mountain river martial soul was too mysterious. It wasn't something that people of his realm could understand. Ling Xiao held the sword with both hands and then looked at Li Xinghui. Looking at the white tiger that was pouncing at him, he directly attacked. Unfortunately, you can't wait for the sixth move. With the breakthrough in cultivation, Ling Xiao's strength had greatly increased. Naturally, he could end the battle without the sixth move. Oh no! What's going on with my true yuan? Me too. Why is my true yuan flying towards the battlefield? The crowd suddenly realized that the true yuan in their body was out of control. It forcibly broke through the barriers of their bodies and flew towards Ling Xiao. At this time, they were surprised to find that all the true yuan had entered Ling Xiao's giant sword remnant soul, causing the remnant soul's aura to become stronger and stronger. Most of the geniuses present were only 7th level martial vein realm martial masters. They couldn't stop the true yuan from gushing out. They were so scared that their faces turned pale and they didn't know what to do. Evil. Wan Ben snorted coldly and waved his hand. The air here was suddenly separated from the air of the battlefield. At this time, the genius's true yuan calmed down. Governor, you're wrong. The true yuan is heading towards the righteous path, towards the great Tao. How can you say that it's evil? Although Lin Zhe also felt that this matter was strange, he didn't quite agree with Wan Ben's words. Wan Ben was not qualified to say that others were evil. Humph! Wan Ben snorted coldly and didn't say anything because he was now very concerned about the changes in the battlefield. Although the giant sword remnant soul's aura didn't rise further, Ling Xiao's sword move had long been prepared. Giant spirit kill. How terrifying was this sword move? How fierce was it? How invincible was it? The terrifying sword qi condensed into a huge sword shadow, as if it was going to cut the world apart. Then it accurately pierced the huge white tiger's shadow. Boom! The moment the sword shadow and the tiger phantom collided, the tiger phantom shattered into pieces like it was made of glass. The sword shadow weakened slightly, but its momentum didn't decrease. It ruthlessly stabbed Li Xinghui's purple crystal shield and then pierced through Li Xinghui's body. A huge rock behind Li Xinghui was completely shattered. Li Xinghui's body was already on the verge of collapse. Ling Xiao didn't show mercy. There was no need to show mercy. He wouldn't kill a person indiscriminately, but he also wouldn't have any mercy for those who wanted to kill him. Chapter 196. No. A miserable cry was heard as a figure dashed out from the crowd and held onto Li Xinghui's corpse, which was about to fall to the ground. It was Li Yunsheng, Li Xinghui's father, Tianfeng City's Li family's patriarch, one of the main culprits who besieged the Ling family. Oh heavens, he killed Li Xinghui in just 4 moves. What was with that sword earlier? That power felt as though it was comparable to a complete martial spirit's attack. It's not that exaggerated, but it's definitely stronger than Li Xinghui's 80% remnant soul. I feel that it's still the problem of the quality of his true essence. This Ling Xiao's foundation is too solid and his true essence is extremely dense. I'm afraid that he won't lose to an 8th level martial vein master. Terrifying, this lad is going to be famous in Sky Cloud City today. What ability does this lad have? I heard that he was originally a beggar. How did he become so terrifying, making people jealous? A beggar turning into a genius. How can anyone accept this? Seeing the results, everyone was shocked. All of them were amazed, but most of them were jealous and unhappy. What they couldn't accept the most was that Ling Xiao was originally a beggar and not a member of a reputable family or a disciple from a large sect. This feeling of disparity was really unbearable for them, and their jealousy was born from this. Over at the Latent Dragon camp, Lin Zhe and the rest were all laughing heartily after a false alarm. Ling Xiao's performance had actually exceeded their expectations. This lad's innate talent was probably much stronger than what Master Bai Yun had described. Lin Zhe already had a plan. Since Master Bai Yun wasn't willing to accept Ling Xiao as a successor disciple, then he would accept him. This kind of genius was absolutely qualified to inherit his legacy. In actual fact, he had originally sent the Latent Dragon Camp's disciples out to hunt the fantasy pill dealers so that he could select a disciple. In this chaotic world, as a general, he could be said to be in a precarious situation, and his potential had reached its limit. He was afraid that he would never be able to break through to the exceptional realm. Ling Xiao had a brighter future than him and was worth nurturing. General Ju Yu turned to look at Ling Yixue and could not help but sigh. Today, I finally understand what it means to be a peerless genius. Ling Xiao, this name might soon become the most outstanding young talent in Baiyun Province and even the human race's sacred dynasty. He'll definitely be able to compete with the geniuses of the ninjas, blue-eyed clans, and barbarians. General, you still underestimated him. Ling Yixue shook her head. Her eyes filled with excitement. General September was stunned for a moment. He suddenly recalled Master Bai Yun's words. The human race, the ninja race, the blue eyes race, and the barbarian race were all inferior races. Although their appearances were quite different, they were still in human form and couldn't go beyond that. However, things were different for the intermediate and advanced races. Their appearance had changed greatly, and their talents were much stronger than those of the lower races. Unless one could ascend to the Transcendent Saint stage, it would be difficult to enter the worlds of these races. The human race's sacred dynasty was very large, but compared to the entire world, it was just a drop in the ocean. However, General September was not very clear about these things. He looked at Ling Xiao and felt that perhaps this young man could tell him what the outside world was like in the future. Li Yunsheng, who was holding Li Xinghui's corpse, was furious. He stared at Ling Xiao and roared, "You executioner, you killed 2 of my sons. I'll kill you." After saying that, he suddenly stabbed his sword at Ling Xiao. Clang! With a crisp sound, the space shook violently. Ling Xiao's clothes fluttered in the wind. General September instantly appeared in front of him and smashed Li Yunsheng's sword energy with a punch. Li Yunsheng, don't forget that this is the life and death cliff. Your son and Ling Xiao signed the life and death agreement. What do you want to do in front of Governor Wan and General Lin? The one who died is my son, Li Yunsheng roared. Of course, he knew that what he did was against the rules. However, Li Xinghui was his only son, and this son's talent was much better than Li Xingyun's. He had always hoped that his son could become Governor Wan's right-hand man. Then, in the future, their Li family could return to Tianfeng City and take control of it. But now, Li Xinghui was killed by Ling Xiao. His beautiful dream was like a shattered mirror that could not be restored. He had lost his mind and wanted to kill Ling Xiao at all costs. Yes, the one who died is your son. However, this life and death battle was also instigated by your son. You didn't stop it before, and even supported it. Perhaps you thought that the one who died would be Ling Xiao. If that was the case, I'm afraid you would be very happy, right? General September sneered. Now that your son is dead, are you angry? What were you doing earlier? Enough. Wan Ben coldly glanced at Ling Xiao, who was standing there, and then looked at Li Yunsheng. On the cliff of life and death are determined by fate. Li Yunsheng, do you intend to bury the entire Li family with you? Hearing this, Li Yunsheng trembled. He did not say anything else, and quickly left with his son's corpse. Before leaving, he looked at Ling Xiao with a vicious gaze. From the looks of it, he really wanted to skin Ling Xiao alive. In fact, Wan Ben was also very unhappy. This result made him lose face. He wished he could kill Ling Xiao on the spot. However, he was the governor, and this was Baiyun Taoist Temple. There were some things that could not be done in front of others. There was another person who was also very unhappy. That person was Fei Yu. Not only because Ling Xiao had killed Fei Mu and Fei Yin, but more importantly, Fei Yu realized that Shi Yulian, who he had brought back from Tianfeng City and treated as his own woman, was now staring at Ling Xiao in a daze. This was simply unbearable for him. The thing that a man could not accept the most was his beloved woman falling in love with another man. Fei Yu felt that his self-esteem had been severely challenged. His anger gradually began to devour his scarlet heart. Ling Xiao, don't think that you're so great just because you killed Li Xinghui. In front of me, Fei Yu, you're nothing. Flying Fish's expression did not change, but deep down her heart was in turmoil. Although he said that Ling Xiao was nothing in front of him, he did not dare to challenge Ling Xiao on the cliff of life and death. Because he was afraid of death, he did not have full confidence in winning. Fortunately, he was about to break through to the 8th stage of the martial vein. At that time, he would be the first to kill Ling Xiao. He could not let this person continue to be so arrogant. Giving Ling Xiao a vicious look, Fei Yu took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He knew that what he needed now was patience. In Shi Yulian's eyes, there was only Ling Xiao left. That young man in green suddenly appeared in the Tianfeng City tournament. He rose like a comet and defeated many experts. In the end, he defeated Li Xinghui and took first place. At that time, she felt that Ling Xiao was not a fish in a pond, so she wanted to seduce Ling Xiao to join the Shi family. However, the appearance of the ninja clan disrupted her plans. She thought that Ling Xiao would stop there. A meteor came quickly and left quickly as well. However, today, Ling Xiao killed Li Xinghui in 4 moves. She suddenly understood something. A sapling that could grow into a towering tree had to have experienced many hardships. Chapter 197. Shi Yulian regretted that she did not insist on stopping her father. She was also glad that she did not challenge Ling Xiao, like Li Xinghui did. Ling Xiao received a fine weapon from Governor Wanben. It was an axe, 10 celestial crystals, and a quasi-transcendent martial technique that he had carefully selected. Then, he left the Baiyun Temple under the cheers of the latent Dragon Camp disciples. He returned to the latent Dragon Camp to pack his things. Behind him were the furious gazes of the Heavenly Ninja Academy's geniuses. When he returned to the latent Dragon Camp, Lin Zhe personally hosted a farewell party for Ling Xiao, Ling Yixue, and the others. On this day, Ling Xiao's name became a legend in the latent Dragon Camp and was talked about by the people who came after him. Ling Yixue and Dai Yuling had become Master Baiyun's direct disciples. However, Ling Xiao killing Li Xinghui in 4 moves on the cliff of life and death was even more exciting. Compared to the 2 mysterious girls, Ling Xiao was more suitable to be a legendary civilian hero. That day, Lin Zhe even accepted Ling Xiao as his direct disciple in front of everyone in the latent Dragon Camp. Lin Zhe did not have any children. Since Ling Xiao became his only direct disciple, it meant that he had inherited his legacy and everything. It was a supreme honor. However, after the celebration party, Lin Zhe told Ling Xiao that although he could obtain some things by becoming his direct disciple, he might face more dangers. He asked Ling Xiao if he was still willing to be his disciple. He gave Ling Xiao a chance to reject. Ling Xiao only smiled in response to Lin Zhe's question. Marshal Lin, I, Ling Xiao, have admired you since I was young. It's still the same today. It's the honor of my life to be your disciple. Good kid. With your words, I, Lin Zhe, will be satisfied even if I die on the battlefield. Lin Zhe was a tough guy. He had never cried before. However, he cried this time. Tears flowed down his face, his body trembled, and his voice choked. In fact, he had accepted disciples before. However, 2 of them were killed, and one of them betrayed his sect because he could not stand being assassinated every day. So after that, he was unwilling to accept any more disciples. Even if the 12 Tiger Guards were so outstanding, he had never thought of taking them as his disciples. However, Ling Xiao's appearance changed his mind. This was because he felt that Ling Xiao was someone who could inherit his legacy. Even if he died, Ling Xiao could still make the border guarding general's estate stand tall in Baiyun province and not collapse. The 12 tiger guards were no match for Wan Ben, but Ling Xiao could. This was a kind of unconditional trust, but he was willing to gamble on Ling Xiao. On that day, Ling Xiao, Ling Yixue, Dayuling, and the others moved from the Leighton Dragon Camp to the White Cloud Temple. There was no courtyard here and no one to serve them. The food was very simple and life was very poor. However, no one complained. This was because the 12 geniuses, including Ling Xiao, all knew that this bit of hardship was nothing. Once they could become a powerhouse like Grandmaster Baiyun, what else could they not obtain? Of course, although the food and accommodation were not good, they were very rich in resources. In the White Cloud Temple, all the new disciples would receive 50,000 taels of silver as their monthly allowance, 100 low-grade spirit stones, and 10 true elemental pills. In addition, there were many natural treasures, spiritual herbs, and so on. This was an advantage. Disregarding everything else, just this point alone was enough to make countless martial artists envious. In addition, they could also receive guidance from Grandmaster Baiyun. So what if they ate a little? As soon as he moved into the White Cloud Temple, Ling Xiao was not in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, he immersed himself in the mountain river world and watched the 7-star flower being repaired bit by bit. The beautiful flower that looked like it was made of crystal was completely repaired after 15 minutes. Of course, the price was a large amount of materials. After the 7-star flower was repaired, Ling Xiao could not wait to test his potential. 7 flowers, all with 3 colors. Soul potential of 7 stars, inner force potential of 7 stars, and physical potential of 7 stars. Moreover, he had obviously not fully released his potential. In other words, his potential was not worse than any of the 4 direct disciples of Grandmaster Baiyun. In fact, he was even stronger than them. After all, no matter if it was Zhuo Lung, Ming Tian, or Ling Yixue, they only had a potential of 7 stars and above. Dai Yuling was not even 5 stars. But what about him? All 3 of his potentials were 7 stars and above. In the past, he did not understand why he cultivated so quickly and comprehended martial arts so quickly. Now he had a clearer answer. After confirming his potential, Ling Xiao was even more confident about his future. After all, potential was really important. After that, he put his mind on cultivation. He had just obtained a quasi-transcendent martial art, the Divine Prison King Fist from Wan Ben. This was a set of fist techniques that Ling Xiao had chosen himself. According to the analysis of the Mountain River martial spirit, after cultivating the Divine Prison King Fist to the perfection stage, as long as he could obtain a corresponding martial spirit, it could evolve into a transcendent martial art. He could obtain new moves and become stronger. When he saw Wan Ben's expression, he knew how good this thing was. He probably wanted to slap Ling Xiao to death. However, Ling Xiao did not care about that. In any case, he had already offended Wan Ben. It did not matter if he offended him one more time. The most important thing was that this martial art was good. Although his meteor fist had improved countless times, as his cultivation continued to increase, it gradually could not keep up with the pace. Although it was a little regretful, when it was time to give it up, he still had to give it up. Of course, the meteor fist could still be used to deal with small fries or martial artists who were weaker than him. The Divine Prison King Fist had a total of 4 moves: Bull's Head Shatter, Horse's Face Shatter, Impermanence Twist, and Ghost King Annihilation. However, as a quasi-transcendent martial art, it was not easy to cultivate. Ling Xiao created 3 doppelgangers. His main body began to comprehend the Divine Prison King Fist. As for the other 2 doppelgangers, one continued to cultivate the Sky Dragon Golden Body, and the other continued to cultivate the Snow Lotus Truth. The Snow Lotus Truth was an internal cultivation method that must be cultivated. Otherwise, it would be difficult to increase the realm. The Sky Dragon Golden Body was a body tempering technique that must be cultivated. Moreover, this was the only transcendent martial art that Ling Xiao had mastered so far. Naturally, he had to focus on it. Moreover, once the Sky Dragon Golden Body broke through to the 5th level, he could be promoted to the transcendent realm. There was no need to worry about the problem of how to break through to the transcendent realm. As for the other things, he could temporarily put them aside. Baiyun Temple was really a good place. It was said that this place was chosen by Master Baiyun and a special formation was set up here, so that cultivation could be twice the result with half the effort. It only took Ling Xiao 2 hours to completely master the first move of the divine Incarcerate King's Fist, Bullhead Smash. However, in the process of cultivating the divine Prison King Fist, Ling Xiao also discovered some problems. His 9 transformation golden body technique had not reached the 9th transformation, which was troublesome, because the power of the first move of the divine Prison King Fist was too terrifying. When it attacked, it would cause the joints to fall off and even fracture and cramp. If he could cultivate the 9 transformation golden body technique to the 9th transformation, he would not have to worry about this problem. The 9th transformation could regenerate severed limbs, not to mention the problem of joints falling off and fractures. Chapter 198. Ling Xiao sorted out all his belongings in the Mountain River realm. If he were to sell all his silver, Gangqi pills, medicinal herbs, and top-rated martial arts, then he should be able to exchange for enough gold to break through. Not only that, he would still have quite a bit left. After all, top-rated martial arts were extremely valuable, especially top-rated martial arts. 1 book could be sold for at least 1,000,000 taels of gold. This thing was useless to him, but to most practitioners, it was still very useful. It could be said that some people might not be able to buy it, even if they had the money. Adding on the Gangqi pills, he had no use for them now. He was already in the martial master realm, and the Gangqi pills had no effect on him, so he might as well exchange all his accumulated gold. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated as he turned around and left White Cloud Temple, heading towards Sky Cloud City to exchange for gold. Sky Cloud City was the capital of White Cloud Province, and there were plenty of big shops here. There were also plenty of places to exchange for gold, and compared to Sky Peak City, it was 10 times more prosperous, so there was no need to worry about the good stuff not being sold at a good price. Thinking about it, he was really lucky. After obtaining the Mountain River martial spirit, the cultivation conditions had changed completely. In the past, when he just arrived at the Ling family, he didn't even have any allowance and was only given food and water. At that time, if he was able to get a few pieces of silver, he would probably be extremely excited. But now he could exchange for a few million taels of gold casually. This was the benefit that power brought to him. This also strengthened his confidence to continue on this path. From White Cloud Peak to the bustling Sky Cloud City Market, although it was a distance of over 10 miles, but to Ling Xiao it was really nothing. He didn't even need any riding tools, and just based on his movement skills, he quickly arrived at the bustling streets. Ever since he came to Sky Cloud City, he had not had the chance to walk around properly. Today he had no intention to walk around, because he knew very well that once one's power was strong, one could walk around anywhere. But as a weakling, walking on the streets might cause one to meet with unexpected misfortune. Anyway, once a practitioner advanced to the transcendent realm, their lifespan would increase by a few hundred years, so there was no need to walk around now. To exchange for gold, the first choice was naturally the auction house. Auction houses had the most abundant reserves of gold and spirit stones, and this was also the place where practitioners liked to trade. The biggest auction house in Sky Cloud City was the Sky Ninja Auction House, opened by the ninjas. Ling Xiao didn't care who opened it. Anyway, as long as he could exchange for the gold he wanted, it would be enough. In a sense, If the ninjas didn't mess around in human territory, he would welcome to trade. At least, the goods would be more plentiful. Of course, the illusion pill was an exception. That kind of harmful thing should have been banned long ago. Sir, may I know what service you require? Is it an auction item or auction item? As soon as they arrived at the entrance of the auction house, a shop assistant walked over and asked with a smile while bending over. This person was from the human race, but the sky ninja level of the lower two, to the sky to cloud martial spirit to sky cloud, I want exchange for some gold. Is that possible? Ling to sky to ask to Ling cloud sky cloud. How much do you? To sky gold? How? Auction gold? To sky to exchange? How much? How much do you to exchange? Gold. To gold? To exchange? How much? The shop assistant said with a smile, I'll ask for 10 million for now. Ling Xiao stroked his chin and said, he had already calculated before he came. The things he brought were enough to exchange for 10 million gold. But even if it was 10 million, after he cultivated the 9 transformation golden body technique, there probably wouldn't be much left. What? The shop assistant was dumbstruck and couldn't say a word for a long time. The few staff members who were busy also looked at Ling Xiao in shock. It wasn't that they hadn't seen rich people before, but to exchange for so much gold at one go, this was the first time. Is this person crazy? 10 million gold. That's 90% of Sky Ninja Auction House's gold reserves. The few practitioners who came to the auction house to auction started to discuss. They couldn't understand Ling Xiao's strange actions. Which family did this kid come from? Is he here to make fun of us? A 50-over-year-old man walked out from the backstage. His cultivation was at the peak of the 6th level of the martial vein, close to the martial master realm. This person was obviously unhappy with Ling Xiao's actions. Adding on to the fact that Ling Xiao wasn't that old, only 14 years old, it was easy to guess which family's unlucky kid had come to play. Shopkeeper Wan. The shop assistants bowed towards the shopkeeper with a face full of reverence. This shopkeeper, Wan, was one of the shopkeepers of the Sky Ninja Auction House. From his surname, one would know that he was from the Wan family. With his power and authority, it made him rather famous in Sky Cloud City. Shopkeeper Wan, he's just a kid. Just give him a few spanks. He won't dare to do it again. Right. Don't make things difficult for a kid. The surrounding practitioners started to plead for Ling Xiao. The main point was that they knew how cruel the ninjas were. In the past, there were 7- or 8-year-old beggars who came in to beg for food and were beaten to death. But they only dared to persuade and didn't dare to be nosy and stop Shopkeeper Wan, because they didn't have the guts. Offending the governor manor, offending the ninjas, unless you were from the border general's residence. Otherwise, don't even think of surviving in Sky Cloud City. Have fun. Ling Xiao frowned. Is this how the Sky Ninja Auction House treats its customers? Even if you have the time, I don't have the time to come here to have fun. Shopkeeper Wan replied coldly. Kid, there are many customers here today, so I won't haggle with you. After 3 counts, if you don't scram, then I will use force. Today, Shopkeeper Wan's mood wasn't very good. Someone from the Governor Manor was killed on the life and death cliff, and the governor was in a bad mood. The entire Wan family's mood wasn't good either. Kid, hurry up and leave. It'll be dangerous if you're late. That's right, kid. You can have fun elsewhere, but here, you can't do that. This is the Ninja Auction House. A few practitioners who passed by tried their best to persuade Ling Xiao, hoping that he would leave quickly. Ling Xiao shook his head and said, If the Sky Ninja Auction House can't take out 10 million taels of gold, then I will naturally leave. Shopkeeper Wan, give me a definite answer. Nonsense. In the entire Sky Cloud City, only our Sky Ninja Auction House and Jade I Clan's Queen's Trading Company can take out 10 million taels of gold. Shopkeeper Wan was furious. This kid actually dared to look down on the Sky Ninja Auction House? Since you can take it out, then hurry up and get it. I'm still in a hurry to go back and cultivate, Ling Xiao said impatiently. The other party's attitude made him extremely unhappy. If it wasn't for the urgent need for gold, he really wouldn't be bothered to stay here. Kid, you're looking for death. Shopkeeper one was really angry. Suddenly, he struck out a palm directly towards Ling Xiao's chest. The terrifying aura of the peak 6th level of the martial vein spread out, scaring the surrounding practitioners until they were trembling with fear. Their blood was boiling and they felt extremely uncomfortable. Humph! Is the Wan family all so overbearing and shameless? Ling Xiao snorted coldly. He didn't even make a move. A terrifying aura gushed out from his body like a sharp sword, directly piercing towards Shopkeeper Wan's palm. At that moment, Shopkeeper Wan was scared out of his wits. He simply saw his own death. Just as he was unable to move and could only wait for death, that terrifying aura suddenly dissipated. Chapter 199. Shopkeeper Wan's face was deathly pale. His body was like a leaf in the cold wind, trembling nonstop. He wanted to stop, but was unable to control himself. Young master, thank you for not killing me, gold. I will get someone to prepare the gold immediately. His voice was also trembling, as though his body was immersed in an ice cellar. Shopkeeper Wan's attitude suddenly changed, which made the few assistants in the auction house totally confused. But there were a few practitioners with strong cultivations who understood what had happened. Although Ling Xiao's aura was hard to capture, but ordinary 6th level martial vein practitioners were still able to sense it. 7th level martial master. How old is he? One of the 6th level practitioners sat there paralyzed, as he muttered to himself in shock. It wasn't that he hadn't seen a martial master before. After all, this was Sky Cloud City and there were quite a number of martial masters. But a 14 to 15-year-old martial master, he really hadn't seen one before. When the people beside him heard what he said, they were so shocked that their eyes widened. Earlier, they were still calling him a wimpy kid, asking him to go home quickly. But they didn't expect this wimpy kid in their eyes to be so much stronger than them. Thank you for your righteous words earlier. Ling Xiao cupped his hands. Words of thanks still needed to be said. After all, these few words were for his own good. This made him, a former beggar, feel warmth. No need, no need. That's what we should do. The few of them hurriedly waved their hands. Ling Xiao smiled at them and found a seat to sit down. He looked at Shopkeeper Wan and asked, My time is tight. When can I withdraw the gold? Don't worry, young master. The gold is in the auction house's vault, but are you? Shopkeeper Wan spoke cautiously now, for fear that he would be killed by Ling Xiao's sword if he offended him. Suspecting that I don't have goods worth 10 million taels of gold? Ling Xiao smiled, and with a wave of his hand, a top-grade martial art was taken out by him. I have 4 top-notch martial arts manuals. In addition, I also have a large amount of Orochi pills, silver, herbs, high-grade martial arts, middle-grade martial arts, and so on. Do you want me to take them all out for you to see? It's not convenient here. Young master, please come to the VIP room. We will have someone evaluate it for you. As long as the value is enough, you can take it away with 10 million taels of gold. However, do you need a beast carriage to help transport it? Shopkeeper One replied with a flattering smile. There's no need for a beast carriage. The VIP room is too small. This room is quite big. Let your people come over and estimate. As he spoke, Ling Xiao took out martial arts manuals, silver, gems, gangchi pills, and other items from the mountain river world. There were indeed too many things. If he went to the VIP room, he definitely wouldn't be able to fit them all. The staff of the auction house began to estimate the value. Shopkeeper Wan even invited 2 level 7 martial masters to come over. After all, the price of a top-notch martial art was not something that an ordinary martial artist could estimate. Seeing these things, the surrounding cultivators couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Good Lord, top-notch martial arts. Moreover, there were 4 or 5 of them. For cultivators like them, such martial arts were simply something that could only be encountered but not sought. This young martial master actually used them to exchange for gold. Although gold was quite precious, it couldn't be compared with top-notch martial arts. By the way, there are also a few low-grade storage rings. Please help me estimate the price. I only want gold. Ling Xiao now wanted to cultivate the 9 transformation golden body technique to the highest level. In the future, he would continue to consume gold, so it was definitely right to prepare more. Anyway, although low-grade storage rings were precious, he didn't need them. As for Ling Yixue and Cold Plum, because they had become Master Baiyun's disciples, they had also received storage rings from Lindsay. There was no need for him to give them away. Even the storage rings can be exchanged for gold. A cultivator stood up directly. Young master, I'm willing to buy your storage ring for 1,000,000 taels of gold. I also want one. Me too. Low-grade storage rings shouldn't be so expensive, but these things were too rare and too important to cultivators, so it was normal for them to be willing to pay a high price for it. This is Heaven Ninja Auction House. It's not your turn to bid. Young master, you have a total of 6 low-grade storage rings. How about we sell each of them at 1,200,000 taels of gold? Shopkeeper Wan was afraid of Ling Xiao, but he wasn't afraid of the other cultivators. What's more, he had a martial master to protect him. No problem. What Ling Xiao valued was gold. Since the auction house was willing to give him more, he would sell it to the auction house. But do you have enough gold in reserve? Young master, don't worry about this. This is only one of our auction houses in Sky Cloud City. We have 3 other branches. It's not a problem to gather 20,000,000 taels of gold. Shopkeeper Wan said confidently. In fact, gold was nothing. These years, the ninjas had occupied several gold mines in the human territory. They didn't lack gold. That's good. Ling Xiao sipped his tea as he waited for the other party to estimate the value, about the time it took to drink 2 cups of tea. The calculation is out. Young master, your things plus the low-grade storage rings are worth a total of 19,450,000 taels of gold. We have 11,000,000 taels of gold in the vault and 10,000,000 taels of gold in the golden cart. It's enough, Shopkeeper Wan said with a smile. This was definitely a big business. Well, that's good. I'll take the gold. Before Shopkeeper Wan could understand what he meant, he saw Ling Xiao waving his hand, and the 10,000,000 taels of gold in the golden cart disappeared. So you have a high-grade storage ring. No wonder. Shopkeeper Wan didn't know about the Mountain River world and thought that Ling Xiao had a high-grade storage ring. Otherwise, how could he store 10,000,000 taels of gold in one go? After that, he and the 2 martial masters took Ling Xiao to the vault to withdraw the remaining 9,000,000 taels of gold. Young master, take care. Looking at Ling Xiao's back, Shopkeeper Wan couldn't stop smiling. However, after a while, his face became gloomy, and he said to the 2 middle stage, 7th level martial vein martial masters beside him, "You 2 follow him." Speaking of this, he put his hand across his neck and made a killing gesture. Of course, the onlookers didn't notice this and didn't hear his words. But the 2 martial masters suddenly left the auction house. Even a fool could guess what would happen. In fact, it was not only Shopkeeper Wan who was thinking about Ling Xiao. Wealth moved people's hearts. Nearly 20,000,000 taels of gold and a high-grade storage ring. This was a huge temptation. Cold Plum, don't hide. Come out quickly. After walking for a while, Ling Xiao shook his head with a wry smile. In fact, he had already felt that Cold Plum had followed him to the city, but he didn't point it out. But now he was going back, so it didn't matter if he called her out. "Young master, you are being followed," Cold Plum said as soon as she appeared. "I know." Ling Xiao just smiled faintly. The reason why he called Cold Plum out was that he was afraid that Cold Plum would be plotted against. It would be much safer to follow him. Cold Plum was obviously a little surprised. The people who followed Ling Xiao were all 7th level martial masters and were divided into 4 groups. Chapter 200. Young Master, you still have to be careful. The 2 people from the Heaven Ninja Auction House are very strong. Cold Plum was not as calm as Ling Xiao. After all, she was only at the peak of the 6th level of the martial vein and had yet to break through to the martial master realm. Yes, they are very strong. They are not far from Li Xinghui. Furthermore, there are 2 of them. In terms of combat experience, they should be better than Li Xinghui. Ling Xiao analyzed as he walked, but it's nothing. He had just successfully cultivated the first move of the Divine Prison King's Fist and was itching for a fight. Now that someone had delivered themselves to his door for him to practice. Why not? Cold Plum, don't make a move later. Ling Xiao suddenly stopped and said, Young Master, there's no need to say any more. I have something new that I want to try. If you make a move, I won't be able to predict it. All right then, but if young master is in danger, I have to make a move. Cold Plum insisted. Up to you. Ling Xiao was not a stubborn person. If there really was danger, he naturally wanted someone to help. After the discussion, Ling Xiao simply turned around and looked at the 2 late-stage 7th level martial vein martial masters who were trying to hide not far away. His green clothes fluttered in the wind like a sword immortal. There's no need for the 2 of you to hide. After following me for so long, if you don't make a move, I'll have to return to the White Cloud Temple. Ling Xiao said indifferently as he stared at a patch of trees. Whoosh whoosh. 2 figures rushed out and surrounded Ling Xiao from both sides. Since they had been discovered, there was no point in them hiding. The rest of the warriors did not make a move. They planned to take advantage of the fight between the Sandpiper and the Clam. They wanted to see the outcome of this battle before making a decision. Ling Xiao suddenly took a step forward. The entire space suddenly became incomparably cold. This step seemed to have changed the surrounding environment. The originally tree-lined world suddenly became dark and damp. There even seemed to be an aura of decay and death. In his ears, it was as if he could hear the cries of ghosts and howls of wolves. There seemed to be ghosts playing in his body. The cultivators hiding in the dark all looked at them in horror. The 2 7th level martial masters from the Heavenly Ninja Auction House paused for a moment, and their bodies clearly trembled for a moment. However, they immediately seemed to have escaped from that predicament. Then they turned into 2 afterimages. Like 2 black arrows, they tore through the air and shot towards Ling Xiao. Divine Hell King's Fist, bullhead splitting. A cold voice came out of Ling Xiao's mouth. He assumed a strange posture. At that moment, the 2 afterimages suddenly stopped, and their bodies became stiff, as if a terrifying cold wind had entered their bodies. His entire body was about to be swallowed by this strange coldness. Terrifying, chilly winds howled between heaven and earth. The 2 afterimages desperately used all kinds of martial arts in an attempt to protect themselves. One of them waved his palms continuously. A man's long saber flashed with a cold light. The ripples produced by his true essence struggled in this space where the cold wind was raging. Huff! Huff! Loud panting sounds could be heard. In everyone's eyes, Ling Xiao disappeared. In his place was a giant monster. It had the head of an ox and the body of a human. It held a huge axe in its hand. The most terrifying thing was the aura of death that was constantly emitting from the monster's body. Die! Heavy footsteps sounded on the ground. The Minotaur waved its huge axe and approached the 2 7th level martial masters, step by step. The slower it was, the stronger the panic in their hearts. With every step it took, the hearts of the two trembled. Stubborn resistance. Perhaps this was the current situation of these two people. They crazily swallowed and spat out their true essence, resisting the terrifying cold wind in an attempt to shatter this dark space. However, it was useless. The Minotaur still walked to their side, and its huge axe fiercely chopped down between the two of them. Crack! Crack! The two martial masters split open like they were made of porcelain. Divine Hell King's fist. Not only did it possess terrifying power, it could also cause the enemy to hallucinate and fall into it, completely losing the ability to resist. If Ling Xiao had mastered this martial art when he was dealing with Li Xinghui, then Li Xinghui would have been killed in one move. Terrifying. Even Ling Xiao felt that this Divine Hell King's fist was too terrifying. 2 7th-level martial masters died just like that. They didn't even have the chance to make a move before they died in the illusion they created. In the dark, the martial warriors who followed along were in a state of shock. Their hearts trembled uncontrollably, as if they had seen the most terrifying thing in their lives. Ghost! A demon from hell! Not a human. Terrified cries rose and fell one after another. Everyone fled, leaving only the two cold corpses, Ling Xiao and Cold Plum. What a pity. After a long time, Ling Xiao sighed. What's wrong, young master? Are you still not satisfied with this power? Cold Plum asked doubtfully. I forgot something. Ling Xiao smiled bitterly and said, I originally planned to use the ghost ship's remnant soul and the Divine Hell King's fist together to test the effect, but I forgot. Cold Plum was speechless. She thought it was something serious, but her young master really treated the two late 7th-level Martial Vein Realm Martial Masters as test subjects. Forget it, let's go back. The side effects of the Divine Hell King's fist are too great. Both of my arms are completely fractured. Ling Xiao shook his arms that were hanging on both sides of his body and said, It's time to cultivate the 9 transformation golden body technique to the highest level. Young master, we haven't searched those two's bodies yet. Cold Plum reminded him. There's no need to search. Death warriors like them usually don't have anything good on them. I'm afraid they don't even have a storage ring. Ling Xiao shook his head and said, although he said that Ling Xiao, who was once a beggar, was still unwilling to let go of the two corpses. Unfortunately, just as he had guessed, the two of them did not have a storage ring or even a money bag. What's this? Ling Xiao struck out with his palm, and a ball of flame burned the two corpses clean. He had once cultivated the Red Sun skill. Although he basically did not use it now because its level was too low, it was not a problem for him to do this kind of thing. What was interesting was that when the corpse and even the bones were burned away, there was a piece of black metal that was preserved. It seems to be a sword, Cold Plum said. It's obviously a 1-foot-long iron piece. How did it become a sword? Ling Xiao asked in confusion. It said that in the ancient times, there was a swordsman of the human clan. His sword was a 1-foot-long iron piece. Cold Plum explained, this swordsman always killed people with his sword, so it didn't matter what he used. The enemy's divine weapons were useless to him. So powerful. Ling Xiao had never heard of such an expert. I heard it from one of the captains of the latent dragon camp. That captain seems to be the descendant of this swordsman. Damn, this terrifying killing intent can make people collapse in an instant. The moment Ling Xiao picked up the iron piece, he saw many scenes of death. If his soul was not strong enough, he would have collapsed in an instant. This thing was originally wrapped in something that prevented the killing intent from leaking out. However, it was burned when he burned the corpses. I'll keep it first and study it later. Thinking of this, Ling Xiao put the iron piece into his mountain river martial soul. Chapter 201 Bayun Temple. Novel! After Ling Xiao returned, he separated from Cold Plum and returned to their respective rooms to cultivate. In order to make it easier to absorb, Ling Xiao did not directly use the gold to cultivate. He went to find the master of the Baiyun temple for help. He drained all the water from a pool in the temple and then poured the scalding gold liquid into it. In order to prevent the gold liquid from solidifying, Ling Xiao also added some special herbs. In any case, he was now Lin Zai's direct disciple and Master Baiyun's disciple. It was relatively easy for him to get some herbs. After doing these things, Ling Xiao mixed the Herculean ape's beast core into the scalding gold liquid. This time, not only did he want to raise the 9 transformation golden body technique to the 9th transformation, but he also wanted to raise his cultivation base and the heavenly dragon golden body to the next realm. Therefore, in addition to the gold liquid, the Herculean ape's beast core, and 72 special body tempering herbs were necessary. To be honest, in the past he could not buy these herbs even if he had the money, but now he could get them for free. This was probably the biggest benefit of becoming Lin Zai's successor. This pool of golden liquid was definitely worth more than 15 million taels of gold. If it was anyone else, they would be flabbergasted. Even Master Baiyun's 2 direct disciples, Zuolang and Ming Tian, were shocked when they heard Ling Xiao's extravagant cultivation method. After preparing everything, Ling Xiao jumped into the gold liquid. If it was an ordinary martial artist, their body would have been scalded or even melted by the scalding gold liquid. But Ling Xiao was different. His physical body was very strong. The 9 transformation golden body technique was cultivated to the 8th transformation. The heavenly dragon golden body was cultivated to the 2nd level, and he even obtained the golden dragon's bloodline. This was definitely not something that an ordinary 7th level martial master could compare to. The seemingly scalding gold liquid could melt most things, but it could not cause any harm to his body. However, the troublesome thing was that he could not use the shadow cultivation secret technique because his doppelganger could not withstand the high temperature. Only his main body could. Of course, this was not a big problem. In any case, it was tempering one's body. Every aspect of one's body would be improved accordingly. One should not be too greedy. Gulp! As Ling Xiao began to revolve his true essence and cultivate, the golden liquid actually began to tumble, emitting a faint trace of steam. The golden liquid looked very beautiful. It hurts. At this moment, Ling Xiao felt a bone-piercing pain. It was as if a blazing flame had drilled into the crevices of his body and was beginning to disintegrate it. The kind of pain had already exceeded the limits of what an ordinary martial master could endure. Even Ling Xiao was in so much pain that cold sweat trickled down his forehead. His face was deathly pale. However, Ling Xiao did not give up. He was very clear that this intense pain was not a bad thing, but the tyrannical medicinal power was taking effect. As long as he could endure it, his cultivation would be considered a success. Not far away, the Baiyun monastery master sat cross-legged while Ling Yixue and Cold Plum sat beside him. They were all protecting Ling Xiao. There was no need to mention Ling Yixue and Cold Plum. The Baiyun monastery master was still a perfected person who had been entrusted by Lin Zai to secretly protect Ling Xiao. Your friend is amazing. With such a terrifying medicinal power, I'm afraid that even an 8th level martial vein realm martial master would not be able to withstand it. He actually withstood it just like that? The Baiyun monastery master was shocked. Ling Yixue nodded but did not say anything. She was also anxious to increase her strength. Ling Xiao's continuous increase in strength had caused her pressure to increase because she felt that if her strength was not as good as Ling Xiao's, she would not be able to protect Ling Xiao. Fortunately, she had become Master Baiyun's direct disciple and received more than 10 times more resources than Ling Xiao. With this advantage, she should be able to barely keep up with Ling Xiao's cultivation speed. Leng Mei, on the other hand, was purely shocked. She had never thought that she would be able to catch up to Ling Zhao's cultivation speed, because in terms of potential, she really could not compare to Ling Xiao and Ling Yixue, these two monsters. Her thoughts were also very simple. Even if she was weak, she would swear to follow Ling Xiao, even if she had to pay with her life. The mountain and river martial spirit in his body was frantically operating. Ling Xiao felt that the mountain and river diagram at this time seemed to have become a huge whirlpool, sucking all the surrounding resources into Ling Xiao's body. The pain gradually subsided. The mountain and river martial spirit played a very important role. It controlled the speed of the golden liquid to prevent too much pain from causing Ling Xiao to faint. That would be too dangerous. However, Ling Xiao was not satisfied with this speed. The mountain and river martial spirit was his martial spirit, so he could freely control it. On this basis, he began to slowly increase the amount of golden liquid. The pain became stronger again. His blood vessels and meridians felt like they were about to swell. That was because too much energy was pouring in and the meridians in his body were relatively narrow. He continued to increase. His meridians felt like they were about to explode. Only then did Ling Xiao stop increasing the amount of golden liquid. Although he was eager to become stronger, he was always a calm and rational person no matter what. With the current amount of golden liquid, it had long surpassed the input of a mid-8th level martial vein realm martial master. He could be proud of it. 2 hours later, Ling Zhao's meridians began to adapt to the feeling of exploding. He knew that his meridians had become tougher and more spacious. Therefore, he increased the amount of golden liquid again, and once again reached the limit before stopping. During this process, he began to operate the Snow Lotus Truth. This was his strongest internal cultivation method at present. Not only did it help to absorb the medicinal power, it also helped to alleviate the pain. The golden liquid was blazing hot, and the Snow Lotus True Essence was ice cold. The two were a perfect match. 3 hours passed. Only half of the entire pool of golden liquid was left. Ling Zhao's body seemed to have turned into gold, shining with golden light. In the night it looked so bright. A day passed. The pool of golden liquid mixture was completely absorbed. Ling Zhao's eyes emitted 2 rays of golden light. He put on his clothes, returned to his exclusive practice room, and began to refine the terrifying energy absorbed by his body. 10 days later, Ling Zhao's practice room suddenly burst out a golden light, piercing the dark clouds above White Cloud Peak. The 9th cycle of the 9 Revolutions Golden Body Technique. He had finally mastered it. However, he did not stop cultivating because this realm still needed to be consolidated, and there was still a large amount of energy accumulated in his body that had not been digested. Another 10 days passed. The 9 Revolutions Golden Body Technique had completely consolidated at the 9th cycle and was finally at the Great Perfection Realm. The progress of the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body was very slow. After all, it was an extraordinary martial art. After entering the 2nd level, it was like a snail climbing. However, at least he had glimpsed the door to the 3rd level, so his efforts were not in vain. With the help of the terrifying medicinal power, the Snow Lotus Truth was directly promoted to the Great Perfection Realm, which was the 6th level. The Snow Lotus True Essence in Ling Zhao's body became even more vigorous. Of course, the most surprising thing was the increase in cultivation. Taking advantage of the improvement of the 9 Revolutions Golden Body Technique and the Snow Lotus Truth, Ling Zhao's cultivation broke through to the late 7th level martial vein, extremely close to the peak. With his current cultivation, it was impossible for him to have any opponent within the 7th level. The only question was how many moves he would need to win. Even if it was an early 8th level martial vein martial master, he would have the strength to fight. If he used the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body with his martial spirit, it was not impossible for him to win. Of course, he also understood that he might be able to win against an early 8th level martial vein expert, but it was still very difficult to win against monsters like Zhuolang and Ming Tian. After all, these two people were like him, belonging to the ranks of geniuses, super geniuses who could challenge those of a higher level. Therefore, Ling Xiao's first priority was to improve his cultivation. Once he advanced to the 8th level martial vein, he would be able to compete with monsters like Zhuolang. Chapter 202. After a month of seclusion, Ling Xiao seemed to have been reborn. His late-stage, 7th level martial vein cultivation had been completely consolidated, and the 9 transformation golden body technique had also been consolidated at the great perfection stage. Next, it was time to focus all his energy on the heavenly dragon golden body. As for cultivating the 9 transformation golden body technique to the perfection stage, it didn't make much sense. It was just a stronger defense, which was not much different from cultivating the heavenly dragon golden body. The Snow Lotus Truth had also been consolidated at the 6th level. He had completely mastered the first move of the divine Prison King Fist, and with the 9th transformation of the 9 transformation golden body technique, he could unleash an unimaginable magical effect. At the same time, his ghost ship, giant sword, blood saber, and black bear remnant had also been perfected to 80%. He was getting closer and closer to a complete martial soul. When he killed Li Xinghui that day, because of Li Yunqing's sudden appearance, he couldn't devour Li Xinghui's white tiger remnant soul. But it didn't matter. Martial souls were more precious than quantity. At present, he had 4 remnant souls and 3 complete souls, which were completely enough. After coming out of seclusion, Ling Xiao found that Cold Plum and Ling Yixue's cultivation had also changed. Cold Plum had broken through the 7th level and become a martial master. Before Ling Xiao went into seclusion, he secretly tested Cold Plum's potential and found that Cold Plum's physical potential had reached 7 stars. Although it was still a little weaker than him and Ling Yixue, this potential was already on par with Zhuolang and Ming Tian. Breaking through to the transcendent stage was absolutely no problem. Breaking through to the martial master realm was even easier. Cold Plum's cultivation had stagnated because she didn't have good martial arts and resources. Otherwise, her cultivation today was probably stronger than Ling Xiao's. As for Ling Yixue, after receiving personal guidance from Master Baiyun, her cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. She was already at the peak of the 7th level martial vein, 1 level higher than Ling Xiao. Furthermore, Ling Xiao could feel that Ling Yixue had learned a soul-tempering martial art that was even more powerful than soul ignition art. However, it should only be a quasi-transcendental martial art. This made Ling Xiao a little puzzled. Logically speaking, with Ling Yixue's potential, it was reasonable for Master Baiyun to teach her a transcendent martial art. She couldn't understand what the old man was thinking. Shi Lei's cultivation had also broken through. He was also at the peak of the 7th level of the martial vein. This was the benefit of becoming Master Baiyun's disciple. Ling Xiao, Ling Yixue, Cold Plum, Shi Lei, and Dai Yuling. The 5 of them were all from the latent dragon camp and had a good relationship with each other. However, when Ling Xiao came out of seclusion today, Dai Yuling was still in seclusion. Therefore, only the other 3 came to congratulate him. Junior brother Ling, you must have benefited a lot from being in seclusion for a month, right? Sure, Lei said with a smile as he ate the fruit. Now, they were all Master Baiyun's inner disciples. Although they entered at the same time, according to age, it was not a problem for Shi Lei to call Ling Xiao junior brother. Among all the disciples of Master Baiyun, Ling Xiao was the youngest, so he could be considered the youngest junior brother. My cultivation breakthrough is a little slow. I'm only at the late stage of the 7th level of the martial vein. I'm still a little weaker than senior brother Shi. Ling Xiao said with a smile. You don't have to be modest. Your cultivation is slightly inferior, but that's because you started late. I reckon that it won't be long before you leave me behind. How about this? While my cultivation is still slightly higher than yours, let's exchange some pointers. How about this? Shirley swallowed the fruit together with the core and said excitedly, sure. Let's spar and find the loopholes in our cultivation. The four of them were now considered friends. This kind of spar was naturally to find the loopholes and fill in the gaps. There was no need to risk their lives or be too serious. After a round of sparring, the strength ranking of the four people was very clear. Ling Xiao was the strongest, followed by Ling Yixue. Shirley and Cold Plum were actually evenly matched. From this point, it could be seen how terrifying the potential of Cold Plum's body was. If it wasn't for the 7-star flower being broken, Master Baiyun would have 2 more direct disciples. Originally, Ling Xiao planned to tell Master Baiyun about this, but after thinking about it, he decided not to. Master Baiyun was not as magical as he imagined. He was really not good at judging people. Becoming his direct disciple might not be a good thing. Of course, more importantly, he could not reveal the matter of the 7-star flower being repaired to anyone. Otherwise, he would be killed. I'm really convinced. I thought that after cultivating the quasi-transcendent martial arts taught by Master Baiyun, I could at least tie with you. I didn't expect the difference to be so big. Shirley smiled bitterly. Junior brother Ling, tell me the truth. How much strength did you use when you fought with me? You want to hear the truth? Ling Xiao asked with a smile. Of course it's the truth. Otherwise, why would I ask? About 50%, Ling Xiao said lightly. That's too much of a blow. I used 100% of my strength, and you only used 50%. You actually won so easily. If you go to the Technique Inheritance Hall again, wouldn't I be less than 10% of your strength? Shirley smiled bitterly. Not to that extent. But what kind of place is the Technique Inheritance Hall? Ling Xiao asked doubtfully. The Technique Inheritance Hall is Master's exclusive place in Baiyun Temple. In fact, it's also where martial arts manuals are stored. However, the martial arts manuals there are only quasi-transcendent and transcendental martial arts. There aren't even any top-level martial arts manuals. In addition, there are some notes of Master's experiences over the years. Shirley replied, Master said that direct disciples can comprehend transcendent martial arts as they wish, but they can only comprehend it once a day for 2 hours at most. Meanwhile, us inner disciples can look at quasi-transcendent martial arts as we wish. However, we are not allowed to bring them out. We have 6 hours to study them every day. Oh! Hearing this, Ling Xiao could not help but smile. For now, quasi-transcendent martial arts were still very useful to him. This time, the Mountain River martial soul's duplication ability would be put to great use. Others only had 6 hours to study, but he did not need to. He could just copy it and read it slowly. The Soaring Cloud Steps and Ox Demon are still needed to evolve. Right now, he could not rely on top-level martial arts to evolve them. Only quasi-transcendent martial arts could allow them to evolve again and have a qualitative change. These 2 mystical arts were probably even more mystical than what the Ling clan's patriarch had said. The more Ling Xiao cultivated, the more he felt this way. There's one more thing. Master said that when Dai Yuling, Jia Wu, Zhu Hua, Lu Xing, Fei Yu, and Fei Lu come out of seclusion, he would personally inspect everyone's cultivation, not including Zhuo Lang and Ming Tian. Ling Xiao asked. Including? Shirley nodded. Don't underestimate this sparring. Master will give out special rewards according to the results of the sparring. It doesn't matter if there are rewards or not. I really want to spar with Dai Yuling. In Ling Xiao's eyes, Dai Yuling was very mysterious and very powerful. She was even more powerful than the geniuses of the Sky Ninja Academy. other than Zhuo Leng and Ming Tian. The third strongest was probably this girl. Ling Xiao did not know when those people would come out of seclusion. He did not want to waste time. Since he knew about the Technique Inheritance Hall, he definitely had to take a look. The martial arts and scriptures in the Technique Inheritance Hall were all collected by Master Bai Yun when he traveled the world. There were many things that could not be seen outside. Only those who became Master Bai Yun's disciple had the qualifications to view them. Chapter 203. Other than Transcendent Martial Arts. Ling Xiao's other books could be read, including astronomy, geography, and interesting news. In the outside world, quasi-transcendent martial arts were things that all martial masters yearned for, including Martial Vein, level 9 martial masters. But here, Ling Xiao could read quasi-transcendent martial arts as he wished. This was probably the biggest benefit of becoming a transcendence disciple. However, he could read them, cultivate them, and learn them, but he was not allowed to bring them out. Of course, this restriction did not mean much to Ling Xiao. Every time he picked up a quasi-transcendent martial art, he could easily copy it. After reading the introduction, he would take a few more glances if he was interested, and throw back those he was not. Anyway, he had already finished copying them. On the path of martial arts, one could not be greedy. Therefore, Ling Xiao's goal was very clear. His defensive martial art was the transcendent martial art, Heavenly Dragon Golden Body. His inner strength cultivation method was the quasi-transcendent martial art, Snow Lotus Truth. His fist technique was the quasi-transcendent martial art, Divine Prison King Fist. His cultivation method was the quasi-transcendent martial art, Shadow Cultivation, Secret Technique. His soul cultivation method was the quasi-transcendent martial art, Soul Ignition Art. Therefore, he did not need to choose any of these martial arts. Multiple Shadow Sword Technique was slightly inferior. It was a high-grade martial art. Although it was said that after obtaining a killing move, its power was not inferior to quasi-transcendent martial arts. However, it was only a high-grade martial art, so it had to be improved. In addition, Soaring Cloud Steps needed to be improved, Imperial Sword Technique also needed to be improved, and Ox Demon Skill also needed to be improved. This way, his goal was very clear. After a careful selection, Ling Xiao could not help but sigh. Transcendent martial artists are indeed transcendent martial artists. The quasi-transcendent martial arts in Master Bai Yun's Inheritance Hall are so comprehensive that it makes one speechless. It is even richer than the high-grade martial arts in the Ling family's library. Multiple Shadow Sword Technique was the complete version of 13 Shadow Swords. It was a quasi-transcendent martial art. The first 6 levels were exactly the same as the Multiple Shadow Sword Technique, or even the same thing. However, this 13 Shadow Swords had 3 more levels. At the 7th level, the number of shadow clones could increase to 6. At the 8th level, the number of shadow doppelgangers could increase to 9. At the 9th level of perfection, the number of shadow clones could be increased to 13. In an instant, 13 sword shadows could be shot out, which was extremely terrifying. Imperial Sword Technique Bronze Scroll, a quasi-transcendent martial art, also known as 5 Elements Imperial Sword Technique. More importantly, after cultivating it, one would be able to infuse the power of the 5 elements into one's flying sword, resulting in different effects. It was far more powerful and faster than the Black Metal Scroll, and its effects were far more miraculous. There were a total of 5 moves: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The order didn't matter. As for the cultivation of Soaring Cloud Steps and Ox Demon Arts, they required a large number of quasi-transcendent martial arts as a foundation. This was not a problem. In the past, when he didn't have the Shadow Cultivator Secret Technique, he could do it. Now that he had the Shadow Cultivator Secret Technique, his cultivation speed was even faster. He just needed to cultivate a few more quasi-transcendent martial arts as materials to upgrade these 2 mystical arts. Others would be in a hurry to cultivate after choosing a martial art. After all, there were only 6 hours a day. However, there was no need for Ling Xiao to do so. He could slowly cultivate after he returned. Therefore, at this moment, he began to flip through the notes and books left behind by Grandmaster Baiyun, hoping to understand more about this world. When he was still a beggar, Ling Xiao loved to listen to his grandfather's stories about the outside world. However, his grandfather, Hong Qi, was only a beggar in the end. He didn't know much. The most he talked about was the matters of Baiyun province. He couldn't even talk about the entirety of northern Han, much less the human race's holy dynasty, the various countries overseas, and the entire world. It can't be. Isn't the human sacred dynasty the center of the world? Why is it only a country on the heavenly dragon continent? After reading one of the records, Ling Xiao was dumbfounded. This world was called the Mystic World. The Mystic World had 13 continents, and the heavenly dragon continent was only one of them. The human sacred dynasty was located on this continent. Although it was considered a relatively large country, it was only ranked third. Ling Xiao found it hard to accept this fact for a while. In the traditional view, the human sacred dynasty was the center of the world. It was the largest country and also the only country that belonged to the human race. However, it seemed that the reality was a little different. On the heavenly dragon continent, there were hundreds of small and large countries. However, there were only 3 countries that were more powerful: the human sacred dynasty, the Blue Eyes Empire, and the barbarian Golden Tribe. The ninja country where the ninja clan was located was relatively famous, but it was only a small country. However, the ninja clan's martial arts development was obviously better than the human sacred dynasty. Therefore, their reputation on the heavenly dragon continent had gradually surpassed the human sacred dynasty. The current human sacred dynasty could be said to be bullied by everyone. It was originally composed of 13 vassal countries and was incomparably powerful. It was indeed the most powerful country on the heavenly dragon continent. However, with the disappearance of the martial spirit, the human sacred dynasty's internal decayed and degenerated. This colossus was almost in a state of disintegration. Ling Xiao couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. At that time, he felt that the Heavenly Peak City was the most prosperous city, and Sky Cloud City was an unreachable place. Now, he suddenly realized that not to mention Sky Cloud City, the entire Baiyun province was nothing. After all, Baiyun province was only a province that belonged to the human sacred dynasty's 13 vassal countries, the Northern Han country. Unfortunately, when he wanted to read more, he realized that it was too little. Other than the human sacred dynasty in the heavenly dragon continent, which had a more detailed record, the rest were all mentioned in passing. The other 12 continents in the mystic world didn't even have a name. This meant that Master Baiyun didn't know either. It seemed that if he wanted to know these, he could only wait until he became stronger and advanced to the transcendent realm before he went out to explore. How big was the mystic world? What magical things would there be on the 13 continents? These really made one's blood boil. Ling Xiao suddenly felt that there was one more reason for him to increase his strength. That was to search for the secrets of this world. The world was so big he had to take a look. After leaving the cultivation hall, Ling Xiao entered into a state of cultivation again. But this time he only had one goal, and that was to evolve the soaring cloud steps. Movement skills had always been very important to him. Although the ghost ship's remnant soul combined with soaring cloud steps was close to the standard of a quasi-transcendent movement skill, but it still wasn't qualified. This made him fall behind others in terms of movement skills. Ox Demon skill was after all an auxiliary skill, whereas soaring cloud steps was an important means to protect his life, so he couldn't be careless. To evolve soaring cloud steps was relatively simple. He only needed to use 2 sets of quasi-transcendent movement skills as the foundation. Some people might say that since he already had quasi-transcendent movement skills, Then why did he need to evolve Soaring Cloud Steps? The reason was simple. After evolving Soaring Cloud Steps, even if it wasn't a transcendent movement skill, then it would definitely be the strongest quasi-transcendent movement skill. In this way, it would definitely be much more valiant than other quasi-transcendent movement skills. 7 days later, Ling Xiao came out of closed-door cultivation once again. At the same time, Dai Yuling and the others also came out of closed-door cultivation. The Baiyun Monastery's master was still presiding over the examination. Master Baiyun's 12 disciples under the age of 16 were all gathered in the Baiyun Monastery's martial arts practice hall. Is Master not coming? Fei Yu asked Master Baiyun in disappointment. During this period of time, although his cultivation hadn't reached the 8th level of the martial vein realm, he had cultivated a quasi-transcendent movement skill to perfection. He really wanted to show off his skills in front of Master Baiyun. Chapter 204. Master doesn't need to come, he can see it. So, you guys have to perform well. Taoist Iran said with a smile. Great. Flying Fish clenched her fist and looked at Ling Xiao. She clearly wanted to spar with Ling Xiao, although they couldn't kill or cripple people in the martial arts practice hall. Teaching Ling Xiao a lesson was still good. Since today is an assessment, everyone has to fight. However, it's best to choose opponents with similar strength. Otherwise, it won't be meaningful. An assessment was an assessment, not a competition. It was an assessment prepared by Master Baiyun to assess the cultivation situation of his disciples. Therefore, it was natural for him to see the problem with the opponents with similar strength. If the difference in strength was too great, then there was no need to spar. Senior brother, Iran, that would be a waste of time. Why don't I be the defending champion and let them spar with me? During the spar, I just need to maintain the same cultivation level as my opponent. How about it? Ming Tian said with a smile. That's a good idea. It's fairer to use you as a reference. Taoist Iran thought for a moment and nodded. Master Baiyun didn't set any rules for the assessment, so he had the final say. Who's first? Ming Tian arrived at the center of the martial arts practice hall and looked at the remaining 11 people. I'll go. The first one to fight was actually Zhuolang. The two of them should be very familiar with each other. Despite having the same cultivation level, they were evenly matched. As expected, the two of them had similar talent and potential. It was just that Ming Tian's cultivation level was much higher than Zhuolang's. After that, Flying Fish, Butterfly Dance, Zhuhua, Luxing, Shirlei, Ling Yixue, Dai Yuling, and Cold Plum fought with Ming Tian one after another. Of course, Ling Yixue lasted the longest. She lasted until the 100th move and still didn't fall into a disadvantage. However, she gradually lost after the 100th move. Although Ming Tian suppressed his cultivation, the quality and density of his true essence was still stronger than Ling Yixue's. More importantly, he used a transcendent martial art. Ling Yixue finally lost after the 120th move. This was normal. The one that surprised everyone the most was Cold Plum. Cold Plum's endurance was actually second only to Ling Yixue's. She only lost after more than 90 moves, and even left a scar on Ming Tian's hand. In the darkness, a surprised voice sounded. Others didn't notice it, but Ling Xiao did. It turned out that Master Baiyun had been paying attention to this assessment, but he didn't show himself. You are the only one left. Ming Tian smiled at Ling Xiao and said, I'm very interested in you. Come on. Ling Xiao shook his head and said, Forget it. Why? Ming Tian was puzzled. If we're at the same level of cultivation, senior brother, you'll lose. Moreover, it won't be of much use to me. Ling Xiao explained, It would be better to let me exchange blows with Dai Yuling, who is at the early stage of the 8th level martial vein. The effect might be better. How dare you? Are you looking down on senior brother Mingtian? Before Mingtian could say anything, the geniuses from the Heavenly Enduring Academy were unhappy. Not at all. Ling Xiao was too lazy to explain. It wasn't that he looked down on Mingtian, but if they were at the same level of cultivation, he was definitely stronger than Mingtian. Without any pressure, he felt that this kind of exchange was meaningless. Ling Xiao, you can't be the only one who's special. You should exchange blows with Mingtian first. This is to test your cultivation, not to fight. Taoist Yi Ran looked at Ling Xiao and said, Forget it. Since Taoist Yi Ran has spoken, I'll listen to you. Ling Xiao knew that Taoist Yi Ran had a good relationship with Lin Zhe. Even if he didn't give Lin Zhe face, he had to give Taoist Yi Ran face. Junior brother Ling, your cultivation is at the late stage of the 7th level martial vein, right? Don't worry, I'll suppress my cultivation to the early stage of the 7th level martial vein. If you win, I'll call you senior brother. Mingtian was clearly angered by Ling Xiao's words and said coldly, That's not necessary. I heard that senior brother Mingtian has a fine treasure sword called the Drifting Snow Sword. If I win, how about you give that sword to me? Ling Xiao just shook his head and continued, Ha ha ha, no problem. Mingtian didn't think that he would lose to Ling Xiao at all. He had the transcendent internal strength mantra and transcendent martial skill. He also had the quasi-transcendent martial skill and quasi-transcendent martial skill. Challenging someone of a higher level was as common as drinking water. Ling Xiao was only at the late stage of the 7th level martial vein. He thought that suppressing his cultivation to the early stage of the 7th level martial vein was more than enough. One had to know that when he was at the peak of the 6th level martial vein, he had killed a martial artist at the peak of the 7th level martial vein. Now that he was dealing with Ling Xiao at the early stage of the 7th level martial vein, he was already very cautious. He really wasn't arrogant. Thank you, senior brother, Ling Xiao said with a smile. Okay, make your move. Mingtian waved his hand and said, Whoosh. In an instant, Ling Xiao's figure disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already behind Mingtian. The whole process was like teleportation. Too fast. Everyone present was surprised. Even Ling Yixue, who had always known Ling Xiao very well, didn't expect that Ling Xiao's speed was even more terrifying than before. This speed was too terrifying. No wonder, he said, that even Mingtian couldn't win against him at the same level of cultivation. Just this movement alone was enough to be in an invincible position. Quasi-transcendent martial skill? No, this is the entry level of the transcendent martial skill. The pupils of the Baiyun Monastery's perfected person suddenly shrank as he stared at Ling Xiao in disbelief. He guessed right. In these 7 days, Ling Xiao had finally successfully upgraded the Soaring Cloud Steps. Now the Soaring Cloud Steps had been completely reborn and evolved into an entry-level transcendent martial skill. The name had also changed to Cloud Dragon Divine Walk. This was more thorough than the previous evolution. After all, it had evolved into a transcendent martial skill, so it was reasonable for such a big change to occur. Blood Blade Shadow King Kill. Ling Xiao instantly activated the multiple shadows sword art to the peak of the 6th level, and then the Blood Blade Remnant Soul appeared behind him. This was an extremely strange shadow. It completely went from a position that Mingtian couldn't imagine. When the sword light appeared, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Ah! Mingtian couldn't resist at all, and his body was pierced by the sword. I already said that you can't be my opponent at the same level of cultivation, let alone the early 7th level of the martial vein. If this was a battle of life and death, you would already be dead. Ling Xiao returned to his original position. He stood there with a cold expression on his face. If he couldn't even kill a martial master at the early 7th level of the martial vein in an instant, his years of cultivation would have been in vain. Humph, Ming Tian, you idiot, you underestimated the enemy too much. Zhuo Leng couldn't help but curse. In fact, although he said so, if he were Ming Tian, he would probably be at a disadvantage when facing Ling Xiao. Shut up! Ming Tian glared at Zhuo Leng and then said to Ling Xiao while healing his wounds, "Yes, I admit that I underestimated you. Let's have another battle. This time, I'll fight with you at the same level of cultivation. How about it?" Being pierced by Ling Xiao's sword in the abdomen was nothing to him, but he had really lost face, so he wanted to win a round. "Before that, senior brother, shouldn't you give me the drifting snow sword first?" Ling Xiao said lightly, "You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories